All right. Good evening. Thanks for joining us this evening for our work session. At this time, I'll ask Ms. Kinzer if you'll call the roll, please.
Ms. Parker. Here. Ms. Kinzer's here. Mr. Harlan.
Here.
Mr. Fulbright.
Here.
Mr. Moore.
Right.
Ms. Urban. Mr. Sims.
Here.
Mr. Hooper.
Here.
Mr. Howell.
Here.
Mr. Lindsay. Mr. Dudley. There you go.
Okay, Ms. Irvin's here. Just walked in. All right, we have some items there you can see under consent. We're not going to go through those, but you can look at them on your own. I've been asked to move the salary study up to the first item on the agenda. Is that all right with you, Mr. Laconin, since that's usually your prime spot? Any other objections to that? If not, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over. Whoever wants to take it for the salary study.
Good evening. We have our salary study gurus here with us. This is Steve, so I'll hand it over to him to go ahead and present. You guys already have the documents that I've printed off in front of you that we'll be going over.
Hello, good evening. Glad to be here. Everybody hear me okay?
Yeah.
All right. I see that you have a full agenda tonight, so I didn't want to monopolize your time and dive into lots of details. So I'm just going to kind of hit the highlights. I consider this a preliminary report of progress on the pay study. We're not completely finished. And usually what happens when we do these is we're helping the client tweak the thing all the way up until implementation. So it's not a matter of we're a consultant that delivers a report and walks away. That's not how we operate. So we would continue to work with you to fine-tune things to make sure we come up with something that fits your needs in terms of managing the people and that's affordable, that can be implemented. May not be able to do everything all at once, but we certainly want to get things on the right path going forward. So that being said, I'm going to, first of all, I think you have a handout, the one-page summary thing here. I'm going to go over that pretty quickly and then maybe open it up for questions. And we can get into more details of the materials in your packet if we wish. Again, I'm not sure exactly how much time you want to take, but we're prepared to answer as many questions as you have that we can answer at this point in time. So back to this one-page summary, just a brief overview of what we did. We interviewed each of the department heads on the classified side. The central office operations folks met with each department head individually, talked about the jobs in the area and their people to make sure we understood the jobs. The approach we take is a market-driven approach. Jobs are valued like they're valued in the marketplace. We do not make some sort of subjective comparison between jobs on the basis of know-how or problem-solving or accountability, those kinds of things. It's strictly market-based, so jobs are valued like they're valued in the marketplace. So, of course, the key to that is understanding all the jobs so we can make sure that we're making apples and apples comparisons as best as possible. So we did that with the central office operations folks. As far as the teachers are concerned, we didn't really need to do any job analysis. We just took a look at the teacher pay scales and compared them to other districts. So, point B there, compiling the market data. For teachers, we looked at 14 school systems, and those are identified in the materials in your packet, labeled benchmarks. For the classified folks, we looked at two sources of data, public sector database comprised of some school systems and other city and county governments. Many of the jobs on the classified operations side, you're competing with other government, not just school systems. And so the list of comparables was expanded to incorporate city and county government. We also have a general business and industry database, likewise for classified general office and operations staff, the non-instructional related folks. You're competing with general business and industry for those people, contractors, manufacturers, retail, banks, whatever. So we did pull data from the general business and industry sector, representing data for Murray County. So for most jobs on the classified side, then we have two numbers, one from that public sector set of benchmarks, and then one from this general business and industry database. We averaged those two together, and came up with a market rate for the job, not necessarily the person, but for the job. These data were all projected forward to July 1, 2022. For the teachers, we just compared, if you will, kind of overlaid their pay scales against yours, and conceptually came up with an average comparison. So step 0, BA, the average of that for your benchmarks compared to Maury County Public Schools. Step 2, BA, compared to that same point in the other school systems compared to Maury County Schools, et cetera. This data we did not project forward, so these comparisons are as things stand today, so it's important to keep that in mind. We'll have to get back to that. But these are the pay scales in effect today in all the comparable districts. So our findings, if you go to number 2 in the bullet list here, pay scale comparison on the teacher side. It's kind of hard to compare, come up with a single number to cite as a comparison, because generally your pay scales trail the market at the bottom end, and towards the top, narrow the gap, so to speak. But at step 0 in the first 5 steps, you're definitely kind of low. In fact, step 0, I think you're ranked 14th out of 14th in terms of step 0. Now the difference is about 5%. It's not huge, but you're last of this group of 14 school systems. And step 0 on the master's thing, a little bit closer, you're 10 out of 14 on that measure. And as you get closer to the top scales, then in some cases the gap narrows between what you have and what the other systems have. So a lot of the problem seems to be in years 1 through 5, which, by the way, are often the key points in terms of retention of new teachers. So it's probably important to try to narrow the gap there considerably. You have 20 steps currently in your teacher scale. Many of the 14 comparable districts had 20 steps, but 4 of them had 25 steps, 4 had 30 steps. So one question has come up: what do we do about people who are at the top end of the scale? In fact, your last couple steps, you really don't have 20, because at the top it's the same number for two or three of the steps. So, so there's concern on the part of some that the long-term teachers, the pay opportunity is kind of curtailed there, and that is certainly the case when you compare to the other systems that have 25 steps or 30 steps. The size of the steps, yours, curiously enough, average or range from 1.06 to 2.2%, so the steps are not all the same, but they don't vary a whole lot. Compared to the comparison group, the steps we're averaging 0.1% all the way up to almost 6%. Now, those systems did not have 6% steps all the way across their scales. What was happening is several of them had picked certain, I guess, teacher retention flashpoints in terms of years of service that they thought they needed to raise the ante. So maybe it was year 5 was a big increase, or maybe it was year 3, or maybe it was year 7, or somewhere in there they had a couple years of increase that were pretty substantially above the normal average step in their plan. And that's something we could consider here. We didn't do that, but we certainly can, and it might make sense to do so. I know that in reading and working with other school systems, retention of teachers in the first 2 or 3 years is really a challenge. That's a lot of where the fallout happens, and year 5 is kind of an important one too. Once we get them much beyond that, we're in better shape. But so it may make sense to pay a little particular attention to what we do in the first few steps, first 5 years especially. Any questions so far? I'll take a quick pause here. Any questions so far? Okay. All right. Findings as far as central office operations, the classified staff. We didn't really have any pay scales to compare with for the most part. You don't really have pay scales here. So we were just looking at actual salaries and how do they compare to the marketplace. And overall, the central office operations staff employees, the salaries are about 83% of the market average. So pretty significantly low. Now remember, the market average is somebody with typically 5 or 6 years in the job. So certainly all employers will hire, most, if not all employers, will hire new folks in below the market rate as much as, maybe 85% of market rate. Historically, in the good old days, it used to be 80%. We don't do that very often anymore because pay increase budgets aren't big enough. But, a lot of employers will start new folks with minimal qualifications at 85% of market. Point of fact, half your people are already below that, and many of those have quite a bit of tenure in positions. So now this varies by department. Some departments were as low as 73% of market, and a couple were almost at market overall, just very slightly below. So it does vary by department, functional area. But if you dive into it in more detail, half the employees have salaries between 71% and 91% of market. That means a quarter of the employees, 25%, are paid lower than 71% of the market for their job. So that's pretty significantly low, no matter how much tenure they have in job. So recommendations. Now this is all preliminary. I think there's still work to be done here. On the teacher side, I don't know, when we chatted with Jennifer and thought about this group of comparable school systems here, it seemed like it might be appropriate to be just slightly above the average of this particular group. So we kind of laid out 3 alternatives here, targeting the 50th percentile, targeting the 60th percentile, or targeting the 75th. And we also suggested, why don't we consider moving to 25 steps instead of 20? Again, that's just kind of a suggestion. We can work through that. I understand completely the rationale for if we have limited dollars. Boy, it sure makes sense perhaps to pay more attention to those years 1 through 5, those teachers where we need to really get them in the system and try to retain those people. Maybe that means we don't have as many dollars left over for the 20 plus year teachers. So I understand that approach, that strategy, but for purposes of illustration, we went ahead and put together a 25-step plan. All the steps are 1.6%, so kind of about average in terms of what the other groups are doing. And again, they're all equal steps. We may in fact not want to do that. We may want to have some larger steps at certain points to try to help with retention of key groups. But anyway, if we were to take all your current people and just move the steps, your current scale, just move the steps to the 50th percentile instead of where they are now, noted here that would cost you $970,000. Now that compares with your base rate. If you don't change your steps at all, and no cost of living or cost of labor adjustment, and just everybody moves a step that's eligible, you would spend $417,000. Now there's a fair amount of folks that are topped out, so they wouldn't get anything under this. And we can look at that percentage here in a little bit, but there's a sizable number of people who are topped out would not get any increase under your current scheme of things. So yeah, there it is. It's about 29% are topped out teachers. So that's a lot. So that $417,000 reflects the fact that 29% of your teachers would not get an increase in the current scheme unless you granted some sort of cost of living, cost of labor adjustment. So
those are incremental numbers. You'd have to add that.
Yeah. So the 50th percentile, if we just put people in the current step and just move the steps, that would be the $968,000, right? Plus the $417, right? Okay. So it'd be $968,000 plus the $417, because that increment, the baseline's incorporated in all these scenarios. If you moved all the steps to the 50th percentile of the market, and then also moved everybody a step, that number jumps to $1.6 million. So compare that if we were to set all the steps at the 60th percentile of the market, you'd be, and just people didn't move, just stayed in the current step, but the new one, you'd be spending 1.2 plus $417,000 for that scenario. And if everybody moved a step, we'd be at 1.9 million. And talk about the same thing with the 75th percentile. The numbers are getting bigger here, and as you can see on the page there. So, so one thing we need some direction from is where do we want to target the teacher pay scales? Do we want to be right at market? What we'd probably do would be to take the benchmark data, project it forward, maybe 3% to project what people will have come the first day of the new school year in the fall, and then build your scale to match that. Call it the 50th percentile scenario. Or we may want to look at something that's above that, closer to maybe the 60th percentile or above, whatever you tell us to do, that would position you a little bit above the average of this group. That's direction we need from you folks, is how we want to look at this and what scenario do you want us to project out. For the central office, we've put together a 17 pay grade pay scale. Each pay grade has 14 pay steps. We've set it up so that they're annual steps. That's kind of what matches what most public sector employers do in city and county government, other school systems, especially the larger ones. Typically, step-based plan with annual pay steps. Yeah, all classified employees. So this would include educational assistants and secretaries and bookkeepers at the school level, food service, all those folks. And if you look in your packet, you can see what the pay scale would look like. We've got two versions of it. It's these pages that are labeled proposed pay structure. You have one that is sorted by pay grade and one sorted by department. They look like this. So you can kind of take a gander at that and see what this would look like. We don't show all 14 pay steps there. We just show step number 6, which we consider to be the that's in the steps. You do have this in the pay scales or in your packets that shows all 17 pay grades and the steps. Step 6 we consider the market step, so to speak. So jobs were assigned to the pay grade for which the market rate most closely matched step 6 in these pay scales. So, for example, a job that had a market rate of $19.30, the closest step 6 is 2001, so that job would go in grade 7, et cetera. So we have some steps below that market rate to reward, to pay people who are just starting out at step 1 with minimal qualifications, track the learning curve up to market rate at step 6, and we have some steps to allow reward for tenure and service up to a certain point. We did black out some steps there that probably aren't feasible in terms of being competitive. You probably need to start your lowest pay scales, especially where your educational assistants are close to $14, $15 an hour, because that's kind of what you're going to need to do to get really qualified people in those roles. So we're suggesting you probably wouldn't even use those steps that are blocked out in black there. But this would be applying to all the classified folks and would guide administration of pay going forward. In terms of what would that cost, very rough numbers, but just to get people in the steps, and there's a lot who are below these proposed step 1s, we're talking 1.4 million. And then 2 million if we move everybody a step once we get them in a step. So pretty sizable cost there. Sometimes what we'll do is we'll create an interim step, like a 1A or even a 1A and 1B below the proposed step 1 to allow you to ease into this over a couple of years. Some people's pay will fall close to steps above step 0 or step 1, but a lot of folks, their pay is below the proposed step 1 since you're so far off market. So we may have to come up with an interim step or 2 below the proposed step 1 to allow you to go part of the way the first year, part of the way the second year, something like that. Those are the kinds of things we have to work with you through to make sure we can come up with something that is affordable and tries to get you on the right track. Any questions?
I want to ask a question. I'm not sure if you have this data or not, or I guess our folks probably have it somewhere. We always talk about how we have such high turnover between year 1 or 1-3 or 1 and 5, but do we have any actual hard numbers of the year that we lose the most teachers? I mean, I know the kind of the general thinking is year 3 or year 5 or year 2 for that matter, but I kind of would like to see some data that confirms or verifies that, if we have it. And I don't want to put a lot of extra work onto you guys, but I do think you asked where we needed to have our target.
Yeah.
I think that's where we start.
I don't have that particular data, but one thing that they have done for us, if you'll see on this pie graph, it shows you that 39% of our teachers are in their first 5 years of employment. So that shows you that we do have a lot of people who are new to the district, so we have lost a lot. And I do also know, like, we have, like, around 200 people that could retire this year, and in the next 5 years, we probably have about 800 teachers that could retire. So just those things to keep in mind, too.
Thank you. I was curious in comparing our pay grades to other districts, especially, is there a way to calculate what the benefits package is that we offer versus what other districts offer? Because that ultimately equals net pay as well. Did we look at that?
We were not charged with doing that, and we quite often do that when we work with other cities and counties especially. And what we find, frankly, is that most of the time, each jurisdiction will have a strong point and a weak point. So maybe the health care package is really good, and they have a non-contributory TCRS plan, and they have a really lucrative sick plan, but don't have long-term or short-term disability. So, you know, each one has its strengths and weaknesses, and when we kind of lay them all out, they kind of all balance out pretty much. So it's a rare one that the benefits package really sticks out and would sufficiently enough that would suggest to us that we could get by with targeting below average in salaries, for example. So those clients would typically have, and I do have a couple like that. So the employees pay nothing for any kind of health care, individual or family coverage. It's all free. They're probably non-contributory in the TCRS, so the employees don't contribute to the retirement plan. Employers footing the bill. Now, they may have some other things that aren't quite up to snuff, but those are the key ones. And so if you were like that, then I would say, yeah, maybe your benefits plan is sufficiently lucrative that we could, as a district, consider targeting something below the average or not being as aggressive as we might otherwise be. But you know, so we could do that. It might be a little extra, I guess, but you know, I'm going to suggest it's probably going to kind of balance out. You're going to have some districts that are really good. Williamson, I think, is pretty strong. Then you're going to have some others that aren't so good. And so how do you compare? And then how do you can't really take a dollar figure and put it into this analysis because benefits, the value of that ranges from 0 to some people to lots for a family of 6, for example. So it's really hard to come up with how you quantify that. So our typical approach is just kind of take a top-down, 40,000-foot view of the benefits package. Is it really good? Is it really crappy? And then we can kind of dictate from there what we should do with the salary side. But I'm going to guess is that your package is probably comparable to what else you see out there. And I don't know, Jennifer, if you have any insight into that, but
I mean, we do pay 100% of an employee's insurance. There are other districts that do pay that. We're not the only one that pays that, as I've learned from going to job fairs, and everyone gets to speak what their district offers. One district offers a dog in each school, a therapy dog. But anyways, But I would say as well, that sometimes especially when you're getting those employees that are right out of college, to them, 100% package, an employer benefit may not be as much. However, when you get towards the end of a life cycle, that's really important to somebody. And so you can get somebody who actually might have more teaching experience to come to your district. And also what we do for once, we can get them to that 15-year, and they've worked for the district for 15 years now, then we cover there on the retiree side of it. So then you can go, well, if you hang with us there and you retire with us, then, we cover that retiree portion. So that's how you can continue to keep your employees as well. So I think it's a big point, and especially for our classified side, we have a lot of people who they work for their benefits. I think to the fact that some people their check is almost nothing. They work for Murray County so they can have these benefits.
Thank you. Ms. Kinzer.
Oh, really brief. Can you explain all this?
Okay. Looks like you're looking at the proposed pay structure. And I can just go through this real quick.
I don't want to go through one of them. I just want to understand what
The columns
one column is market median, one's midpoint, there's figures in between, and it's kind of all blurring as I look at it.
All right, so hold that up again. Which one are you looking at?
I'm looking at the preliminary draft, the proposed pay structure.
Got it.
For, I assume it's for assistants, central office, principals, everybody other than teachers.
Okay, so getting left to right here, you've got job title, we've got the scheduled days, number, some are 11-month people, some are 12-month, or the jobs, or these are jobs, not people. Then we put in the requirements, high school plus 2 years of experience, et cetera, bachelor's, whatever. This was pulled off the job descriptions for the most part. Then the market median, the numbers in red, that's the average of the public sector database numbers for the jobs, other city and county governments and school systems.
What does that represent, $57.25 an hour?
Yes,
Okay.
That's the hourly rate.
Right.
So that would be the average of the public sector number and the private sector number for the classified staff here. The proposed pay grade refers to the pay grade structure, which is this one in your packet here. This one. Oh, this one. Shows the pay grades, so that shows which pay grade the job goes into. And then the midpoint is step 6 from that pay scale. Remember, we talked that in terms of being the market step. So jobs were assigned to the pay grade for which that step 6 most closely matched the market rate for the job. And then at the far right-hand column, the proposed grade structure index. This is a measure of the competitiveness of the pay scales. And ideally, that should be at 100%. That would say that, and that's merely the index. We took the proposed step 6 and divided it by the market rate for the job. So ideally, that should be about 100%. Ostensibly, our pay scale, our pay structure is designed so that the step 6 mirrors the market rates for all the jobs in the pay grade. So that should be, 95 to 105%, somewhere in that range is where we usually find it. And if you can look at the very end, we come out at 99.9%. So overall, these step 6s are pretty much right at market.
All right, good. I just wanted to be able to know what I'm looking
Sure.
at. One quick question. Going back to the teacher, we don't have a step raise at 16 or 18.
Yeah.
So you took that into account in figuring that as well.
Yeah, so, and again, there's a pay strategy that would suggest that's appropriate, saving some dollars on the top end to spend it on the new teachers. That maybe is a legitimate approach. But we said, you know what, let's just have 25 steps. Everybody moves a step. And we can play around with that some more if you want, but that's, in terms of modeling and going forward, we thought, let's start there.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Sims.
Thank you. I have a little bit of a problem in just saying that benefits, maybe we didn't look at benefits because in ours, when we're building the budget, benefits are very important.
Mm-hmm.
It definitely goes along with, the salaries. And so for just to very flippantly just say, oh, we didn't look at that, I have a problem with that. So I'll leave that there.
Well, we can if you want. I mean, it was not in the original scope of work, so we can do that, and we often do.
Okay. When, I guess early on you asked about, or you were, whenever you were speaking, at the beginning, you said that, you interviewed all the department heads. Who all in that did you interview? Was that, I'm looking at the next to last page, where it breaks it down, the top 3, 17 pay grades, and then 16s, 15s.
Mm-hmm.
I can read that a little easier than the previous pages. Did you just do the top 3, or did you go
Sure.
on down through there? How did you do that?
Yeah, so you met with, Brian over food services, Murray with maintenance. We had originally set up with Garth, but Garth couldn't make it, so Mr. Perryman, met with him. Mr. Perryman met with him as well. Tommy Schuyler over, each of those department heads in the operations side all met with him. I met with him, Mr. Gaines met with him to go over the instruction department and, covered those areas.
Okay. All right. In determining where people are placed, was it just based on other markets, or did we delve into our individual job descriptions, I guess, Murray County job descriptions, where they looked into on our people's
so we
workloads?
matched your job descriptions, not job titles, but the actual job duties being performed. We tried to find matches to those in the database, both for the public sector and the private sector.
Okay.
We started out with a very large, broad overview with an Excel spreadsheet that had all the different jobs, and each of the department heads looked at those jobs. And then from there, when they had further questions, they contacted us. And then Melinda in my office, we went through and got all of our job descriptions. And if there was anything that they weren't sure of, we walked through it and worked through it. So they have a vast majority of the job descriptions when there was a question as to what that job duty was.
Okay. And you know, just looking at it, there's some that, you know, and just in my eyes would be just as important in a level 16, and they're down on the 14, you know, nutrition being one of them. I mean, they budget millions of dollars and supervise lots of people. I mean, I don't know why he's down on 14, you know, and so I just didn't know where we come up with just putting, where you placed people and how you placed them.
Right. So this is market driven. It's not subjective evaluation of the jobs, other than some general internal equity kinds of considerations. But basically, whatever director of nutrition, the head of nutrition was paid, that's where we plugged it in. Wherever director of instruction was plugged in, that's where whatever that was paid, that's where we plugged in. So it was all based on the market data. Now, to the extent Murray County Public Schools values nutrition more or less than Williamson County or Dixon County or whoever else, that's kind of a subjective thing that we can talk with you about, but assuming that everybody's placing equal value on nutrition, special ed, instruction, transportation, maintenance, all the different functional areas, then it makes sense to just look at the market and plug the jobs in based on the market data. Now, it could be that the data for a particular job was skewed somehow, or we're kind of basing our analysis on the law of large numbers here. To the extent the law of large numbers doesn't apply because we don't have lots of data points for a particular job, maybe the number is not as robust as it could be. And, you know, if you say, Steve, this doesn't seem like it fits in the 14s, it fits better with the 15s. And, I might ask you why, and we might go back to the job description, maybe the requirements weren't robust enough, or maybe we missed certain job accountabilities and didn't take that into account, but we try to work with you to come up with something that we think fits. If you feel strongly that, as a district, that goes in grade 15, that's probably where we would put it.
Okay. Well, and it wasn't, I just used nutrition as the example, just because it was just an easy one that I looked down and saw, really, but,
and it is.
Some have
to
budget and are over millions of dollars,
Yeah.
and they're down there, and then others are not even a true supervisor, and they're up higher and don't have to deal with budget numbers, and so that's why I was a little confused on why there were some that were levels higher than
So again, we
other
didn't look
actual
at those other
supervisors.
factors. It was just how
Okay.
they were paired, how this group of benchmarks paid those jobs. And, nutrition is kind of an interesting one. I think historically, some districts have undervalued that function. The bigger ones typically don't, but a lot of the smaller ones have historically undervalued that function, and it's probably reflected a little bit in the data. And there may be other functions like that too, that school systems have kind of undervalued relative to other employers.
Thank you.
Mr. Howell?
Thank you. So I too echo a little bit of Mr. Sims' concerns. I thought we were looking at the total package. I wanted to look at the total compensation package. That way we genuinely are, I want to compare apples to apples 100% across the board. If we shine somewhere or we don't shine somewhere, maybe that's something that we need to look at to shine somewhere. So I would like to see a complete study. In my mind, it's not complete without looking at everything. Another thing too is when you look at the market data, what data are you using? Is that federal? Is that state? Is that, local? Is that regional? Is that, Middle Tennessee? What data are we looking at specifically?
Okay, so for the classified staff, I guess what you're talking about.
Well, for classified staff,
Yeah, yeah.
When you
Teachers-
say
teachers-
market, where are we getting that data
So
from?
there's several sources. One, we had the public sector benchmarks, the other city and county governments, so that was a big piece of that. So how other cities and counties, that would be good comparisons to Murray County Public Schools. So Murray County's in there, Columbia's in there, I think we got, we've got Spring Hill in there, we've got, you can read them all, they're on the list here. So that's that group. These would be direct labor market competitors. We've got a couple that are a bit further out maybe, but are good benchmarks in terms of demographics. But those would be good benchmark comparisons. Then we have our general business and industry database. There's 4,000 job titles in that. It's updated quarterly. Several industry, about 100 industry breakouts, and it's Murray County focused data. So it's kind of a labor market model, so to speak, this group, and but it's Murray County.
Okay, that's my concern. I just wanted to make sure that we're specifically looking at Murray County, not looking at a general average over
No.
over a large area. So that specifically. I think that's the only questions I have at this time.
Okay. Hey, before I forget, all these numbers, they do not include the FICA or retirement contribution numbers, so that you'd have to add that to the cost impact. And also, just as a point of reference, on the bottom here, this proposed or estimated cost for implementing the proposed pay structure for the classified staff, that 1.4 million amounts to about 8% of payroll, just to kind of put that in context. So it's a pretty big number.
Thank you. Mr. Moore?
It's okay.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm gonna go right in line with that. I know when we talked about this before, I thought we had talked about benefits. I know for me, looking at the total benefits package is kind of a big deal, and I'll, for two reasons. One, I feel like I feel perhaps more than you do that it feels like there's an impact there, because I think there's going to be a variety of benefits across some of these various positions and different school systems or public entities. More importantly, I know we've talked about this for a few times over the years about trying to make some corrections and fix where we're going. And one of the things that we've, especially as we've had a teacher, and this is not to you as much as it is to kind of everybody else, as we've looked at teacher shortages and other position shortages, I just feel like this is why we're in the middle of doing this, and I think there obviously needs to be some adjustments to what we do. I think this is the time to also look at our total compensation package and take a really hard look at who or what we're trying to attract, or who or what we're trying to retain, and being very targeted with that. And this seems like the right time for that. I know, as I talk to teachers and I talk to different people in various fields, and you're right, age plays into some of this. Some people, if you're a brand new teacher, retirement benefits from 30 years from now may not seem like a lot of value to you. If you're a lot closer to that 30-year mark, or wherever you're planning to retire, retirement all of a sudden looks a whole lot like a more important to you than maybe the dollars you get in your paycheck each time today. And I think what I'm seeing is there may be some shifts in what our teachers or what our staff want. I don't know where that ends up. I just think it would be kind of a mistake for this board to not look at those things as we consider what our options are moving ahead. Because I want to be responsive if our staff wants to move this direction in terms of benefits or pay, we may want to look at doing that, but look at all of this and move that direction and free up our resources to make sure we're meeting that need. I know especially, by the way, just one of the pages that gave us the pie chart. This is great information, by the way, to know the percentage of who's topped out. I would love to start seeing this every year, by the way, from now on, to kind of know where because we've talked about this in the past, but I never knew that, 39% of our staff is in the 1 to 3 year mark. 1 to 5 year mark. That's, for me, is kind of important, because as we talk about, I know Ms. Kinzer has brought up over and over again about the first couple of steps. That makes a lot more sense with this information for me to be able to say, hey, if that's where we're at and that's what it looks like we're generally attracting, or maybe we need or we're looking to attract, then looking at those numbers makes a lot of sense, and it gives me some information to go behind that. So I'll give you that one, Ms. Kinzer. But for me, that's it's on tape. Just losing. I'll even sign it for you. The other things, I do like that you guys considered the step changes, and again, I don't know if that's the right option to go from 20, 25 to 30, but it's something I've always wondered as we look at, does that make sense? Do we need to stretch that out? And if that's something our staff and employees is a true benefit, not just a benefit we're offering, but a benefit people want, then that seems like something we should look at moving towards. I just don't know the answer to that, to be honest, but I would love us to have additional discussions about those kind of things, so we can start to target how we compensate our staff for the work they do and make sure we're giving them what they want, not just giving them a benefit that they say, great, that's awesome, I don't care. But it does cost the taxpayer money, so that's the thing I want to balance out.
So I guess one point I'd like to make is the data are kind of backwards looking in a way. It's kind of what's existing now and what's been going on in the past in terms of how employers have defined the benefits packages and set pay rates and all that sort of thing. So to the extent, and this is becoming apparent as we talk to all employers, that what employees are looking for is changing right now. It's different than 2 years ago by a large margin in many cases. And so those changes in how employers are responding to it probably aren't in the data yet. So it may be more a matter of, I don't want to, I know some employers do employee surveys and try to here, what's important to you? You said, ask them. How else do we know? Ask employees what's important. There's, you have to be careful how you do that and how you position that. But that may be, in terms of where you're headed, maybe something you need to do is get more information on what, and I think a lot of employers are struggling with this. I know some employers can't hire a professional person if they can't guarantee them at least one day of work at home a week. And so that wasn't the case 2 years ago. So, and we're hearing time and time again, more flexibility in terms of hours worked and those kinds of things is absolutely critical. And the employees have enough options out there that there's something over here that can pay about the same, but give me more flexibility. I'm all for it. I'm going there. So I think a lot of this is kind of up in the air as far as what employees are really going to ask for and how employers are going to respond. Some employers are going to say, tough cookies, see you later. Others are going to try to work with those people because they're important and they need them and want to keep them, and they can't find somebody else to fill their place. So they'll be more accommodating perhaps. And so you'll
Okay.
see a wide variance of how employers respond to that.
Thank you. Ms. Irvin?
Jennifer, this is probably for you. The reason why I ask about insurance benefits to begin with is, as you've heard, it's very, very important. I personally would like to see a dollar amount tied to what we offer our employees. And the reason why I say that, not only does it help us see how competitive we are against other districts, but I know there was a time in just what you've said, one size does not always fit all, and I know some districts offer like cafeteria plans, because sometimes you have situations to where maybe a spouse has a better buy-in on their health care or what may, and some teachers are just, they have the insurance because it's free, but maybe they would, like for instance, prefer to have that as a daycare reimbursement, and that's, I think, can be a critical factor too. I don't know if that's something, I don't know how horribly hard that would be to incorporate, if that's even something our employees would want, but the whole purpose of this, in my opinion, we do have a cafeteria plan, and it's where they can choose all of that? Okay, I didn't know that that was an option. Okay.
American,
So that is currently in play?
it was when I was teaching.
I guess maybe to understand exactly what you're asking, like, they do have, they can pick their different plans, they can pick like an FSA where they can put money away and then they can pay for their,
But is that in lieu of buying into the health insurance? Or do they automatically get health insurance? So that's what I was saying. So in other districts, I know that instead of buying into the insurance, let's say if that's I don't know, $700, I don't even know what that would begin to cost. I don't want to throw a number out there, but that's what I'm asking, is that if they have another option for health care, then maybe they could get that back as a reimbursement, like the county gives them that much money for them to choose what they want to do with it, whether that's buying into the health care, whether that's getting it as a dependent reimbursement for daycare, if it's getting, medical reimbursement for cost. I'm just trying to, while we do this, make sure that we're doing things to be as competitive as possible and fit the needs of not just one but all. So that was another point I would at least like for us to explore.
okay. Sorry, I don't have the answer to that right now, so I'd have to look into it.
Okay. Ms. Kinzer, you had your light on.
I don't think my light was on before Mr. House, but I'll go ahead and say, we've said this before though, we do have good benefits, but our surrounding counties have equal to us now. Everybody seems to be on an equal playing field, but here's what, when you get out of college, you need a living wage. None of them are going to say, oh my gosh, I'm going to shop insurance. I can tell you that most of them are, okay, but what I'm saying to you is that rent is unbelievable right now, car payments, all of that has to come out of, our beginning salary is not a living wage. It's not a wage that a single person can live on. That's why they're not coming to teaching. Benefits, they are important, and I thought we had a cafeteria plan where you could take daycare, that would come out of it, then you would be reimbursed for that. You could have another cancer policy that would come out, that kind of thing. I don't think American Fidelity is one of the cafeteria plans we have. It did. I don't know.
We're with a different company, but yeah, we do have those options that they can choose those supplemental benefits.
Right.
Yes, that's correct.
But I also know that our teaching assistants, our support staff pay a phenomenal amount of money for family insurance. That's why they're working. And then we're talking $400-something a month. Am I somewhere in the ballpark of there?
Yeah, it depends on what they've picked, but they could be.
What they picked or something else. So that to me is another really difficult issue, because they are really sorely underpaid as well.
All right, I have one more light on, and after Mr. Howell's done, I'd like us to give staff kind of a direction that we want to go and move on from this conversation. Mr. Howell.
So I can tell you, the city of Columbia, if your spouse, or if you have insurance through somewhere else, like TRICARE, if they're a veteran or whatever, they offer you a $1,700 at the end of the year bonus. Well, not bonus, it's reimbursement, because the city of Columbia also, same situation, they pay for the employee's health care. And if you're not on their health care, well, here's a check for $1,700. I mean, that, for some people, is a benefit. Is that gonna work for everybody? No. It doesn't work for me, but it does for some folks, and it is an added benefit. I want to go back to this current teacher population. So we've got 30% of our teachers are topped out. In the 25-year scale, how does that present that number? Is it substantially lower? Are we going beyond that as far as being topped out? So if we're on a 25-year step plan, what is that? I mean, you probably don't have that number offhand, but and then beyond that, what's a 30-year step plan look like as far as getting the topped out?
So we did roughly calculate that cost because we knew somebody was going to ask that question. And Beth, you may have to step in here and help me out with this. But for example, if you created a pay scale at the 50th percentile, put everybody in there, and then allowed everybody to move a step, because those people that were now topped out would be able to move a step, that incremental cost would be almost $800,000, right, these two?
Yes, but that does not put people in step 25. It only
Right,
puts
right.
them
Step
to
21.
well, actually, technically, this would put them to step 20, because when we ran this, we put everybody in step 19, because 19 and 20 are the exact same
right.
step. So they're really topped out when they hit step 19. And so this number, the roughly $800,000 number Steve just mentioned, puts all of those topped out people to step 20. Now, if we were to say, look at all of their years of service and put them in step 21, 22, et cetera, and see where they should be based on years of service, that would be a different number, because some of them
Sure.
would obviously make more. But this just assumes that those that are at 19 would go to 20, and then...
Well, I just want to know how that number would go down if we did a 25-year or a 30-year, that 30% or 29% number population-wise. So if we go to a 25-year step and we start moving people, they're not topped out anymore, right?
Right,
So does that go down to,
Zero, because no one
Okay.
would be topped out initially
Okay.
for 5 more years, because you would let them all hit
okay,
additional
so then it would be,
increases until they hit
okay,
25.
gotcha, thank you.
All right. Is there any action we need to take as a board other than to tell our staff that when budget season comes around, we want to see some increase?
I would suggest that we let this be part of our, retreat,
Okay,
and come to some sort of decision as to what we want to happen, and,
Okay.
and that way it's ready for budget, or if we want to do anything right away.
okay. So we'll set it for the, retreat. Anything additional?
Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine with me. Oh, more?
I don't know if you're looking at her or me. Just so I'm clear, was the retreat specifically for facilities, or are we kind of making it a catch-all? I just don't want to crowd if we've already got a full plate.
I'm wondering if this is two different meetings that we're talking about. I don't know. We need to determine.
Well, okay, I guess I'll back up on that. Much like I feel like we should be talking about facilities kind of in its own thing, because it's a pretty loaded plate, I feel like this is a loaded plate too. I mean, I hate to create more meetings, but there's a lot of things for us to consider here. There's been some great information. I think we as a board are gonna have to kind of talk through with some more direction from staff, what direction we want to go. I mean, are we wanting to lean a certain direction? I know one thing that was mentioned on the survey part, for example, I would kind of lean towards getting some employee survey out that gets some, what are they looking for? Because I'd like for us to try to not just do something random because we feel like it's the right idea, but get some feedback on what employees would like to see.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Parker?
I was gonna ask too, you mentioned that you could do the benefits analysis, but I know that wasn't covered in our scope of work, so do we need to do an addendum to the contract and what would be the time frame to get that type of information to us?
We could turn that around pretty quickly. We conducted a pretty good survey. The data, the benefits data are the last thing we compile. So we haven't compiled all that data. And some of the districts, I'm not sure we've got their benefits information yet. So it'd probably take us a few weeks to get that data in and turn it around. Cost is probably a couple $1,000. You know, it's more a matter of getting their stuff in here is the big roadblock.
Yeah.
Sounds like it's under 10,000, so they can figure it out. Right?
Okay. All right, is that something we could have in time for, when is the retreat scheduled?
It was March, like, 6th or 7th.
March 7th?
March 7th.
Would that'd be pushing it maybe a little bit?
Be pushing it. We could probably have you something.
Maybe
yeah,
just some rough ideas.
Yeah, we could probably get you something by then. We may
Okay.
not have all the data from all the districts we want, but you know, that's, yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Do we need to adjust our date? Okay, so we'll do facilities on the 7th and have a separate retreat for this, possibly later in March? Well, that's what we need to decide. Yeah, that is to address the facilities. So I do think this needs to be a separated item that's what we need to decide tonight before we go any further. Sorry, I keep forgetting to look over here.
I mean, can we find out when you would have information for us and set it based on once we have something to talk about? I'm not asking you to put that on right now. I'm saying if he can find out how long it takes them to get the stuff. I don't want to schedule something and then put a rush on it and get bad information.
What do you think?
Okay.
I want to do this once.
Because we have some of this data in-house already that responded to our request for information. Some have not responded to that. Sometimes we can get their information, go on their website, and the HR department website, and pull it off there, but there's usually something that's missing that we have to call them about. So, but usually we can get that data in pretty quickly, and then we can turn it around. This is not a super detailed analysis, but we look at healthcare, employee contributions, some of the key features, deductible, co-pays, some of the key features to try to distinguish the not so good plans from the better ones, and so it's not too hard. But
Ms. Gerard, would you be able to get with them to set us a date? Okay, thank you.
Are you all looking for a Saturday or looking for a weeknight for the retreat?
Yeah, find out what dates work, what kind of time frame you're looking at, and then we'll
Okay.
do something.
would you like us to be there? Is that?
You don't need
Okay,
to.
fine.
No.
All right. That's fine.
All right, so we'll set that tentative based off of what y'all decide would be the time frame that you think you can get it done.
Okay.
All right, we're about to move on. I just want to add two things just to keep in mind on our behalf. I talked to a principal this week who had an education assistant leave to go to work at Sonic because they were getting close to a 50% increase in their salary. That's happening. That's real. The other thing is, it's not lost on us that we put raises in just about every year and then get a budget sent back to us from the county commission because they can't find the money to fund those raises. So that's a little bit of what we have to help educate. You know, we were reminded pretty well that a lot of our scores were below average. Well, we've got the documentation right here to say our teacher support is below average. So shouldn't be a real big shock. So for the county commission, I hope that they are listening to find out that these truths as well. All right, moving on. Thank you for your time. Thank you for all the hard work that you put into this. Moving on to finance. Mr. Laconin, your time to shine.
All right, and I'm going to try to shine briefly unless there's a question on these budget amendments. I can go through them individually if you would like. But a lot of these are federal fund cleanup items. We also have an insurance recovery from an ice storm. We have a new grant, the literacy training grant, and we're allocating the budget for that. And we are correcting budget amendment 11077. So, are there any specific questions on these budget amendments at this time?
Any questions, or do you want to send to consent? Consent agenda it is.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Do you want to cover anything with monthly financials?
I would. We are starting to do our year-end projections at this time to see where we're going to end up. I will say vacancies have freed up a lot of our budget, and we've allocated a lot of those funds to where hopefully, departments can really get spending the funds, but it's really hard to do when you look at your payroll. If no one's working, then you're not spending those funds because you're not paying anyone. So at this point in time, we are projected, we are actually $10 million in fund balance ahead of where we were this time last year. And that is, we did a projection saying that we would end the year. At this point in time, it shows $9.5 million surplus, and that's us expending every supply and service and capital line that we have. So that shows that part of that is us exceeding our revenue projections, particularly with sales tax. We're easily going to hit the $24 million mark, easily, and we budgeted 16.8. And the second thing is payroll, just an influx of, and it looks like we're going to be about 7.6 million across the board if we continue on the current trend we are. Now, the thing is if we fill these positions and we get people back in the classroom and we get staff to work for us, then we'll see that surplus dwindle away very quickly. For example, if we filled all of our positions today, we'd only be looking at about a $4 million surplus. So there are funds in the fund balance that we have already allocated, we put into the budget, and if we go ahead and spend those, and if you wanted to pull money out of fund balance at this time for projects or for other things you would want to do, and staff has kind of talked about this in executive, and we know that we just had a conversation about funding a pay study. So there's plenty of need to go around to spend that. So just some information. We're going to update this projection and give it every month so that you have real-time numbers to make real-time decisions.
I appreciate those numbers. I do want to just reiterate that we have empty classrooms. We're not financial geniuses who are saving the county a ton of money. We're not providing the services we're supposed to be providing. That's how we're saving a lot of this money. And I'm not fussing at you, Doug. This is not on you. But I do think that before we get too excited and pat ourselves on the back, we need to realize that we are not doing what we are constitutionally obligated to do by the state of Tennessee. And that's where a lot of these savings are coming. The other thing I would also like to remind is the great fund balance that we have is going to be remembered when the county commission says, why do you have all this fund balance? And it was because we didn't raise the maintenance of effort. And that's how we're doing some of this. So I don't want to give ourselves too much sunshine, because we've got a long way to go, and we're looking at an uphill battle when it comes to the way the county commission is funding us this year, and hopefully not in years to come. All right, but thank you. That was good. I mean, it is good news overall. I don't want to rain on the parade, but I do want to be realistic.
And I appreciate that realisticness, because we really need to focus on what is actually happening, because information gets skewed all the time. So when we're building our budget for next year, and we've been in budget meetings all month already, we are going to bring you an expenditure budget, but also revenue-wise, I'm going to make my own projection at sales tax, and that will be up to the commission on their own if they want to change the maintenance of effort downwards with that revenue number or not. Okay. If there are no more questions on the monthly financials, Mr. Chairman, I'll move on to policy updates. Ms. Irvin.
I just have one for you, Doug. sorry. I just wanted to make sure that we, at the end of the school year, we're keeping up. We'll know the exact dollar amount of what we've saved on projected wages. You'll be able to give that to us?
Yes, ma'am, and it'll be later than that because we continue to pay employees after that last day in May. So, we will pay teachers all the way through July 31st. That'll be when we do our last payroll. But it is on our year-end financials. We account for that information in this fiscal year. So we have to do an entry to bring those July payments back in, to be part of the financials.
Do we have any idea of roughly what that might be, just guesstimating?
If we continue with the same vacancies, just the teacher line by itself, it looks like we're gonna come in under about $1.7 million, yeah.
So this is and this is a whole another conversation, but, what I'm hearing from teachers is that they're the ones that are paying the price. Not only our children are definitely paying the price too, but a lot of our, teachers have been stretched thin, and I don't know if it would be possible to look at that number and then divide that out by our staff that's carried the weight of those vacancies and give that as a bonus. I think that might do some good for morals,
I think that would be something definitely worth looking into. All right, thank you for that. Mr. Laconia, keep going.
All right, so policy updates. These are policies that the Financial Management Board has already passed before. There are a couple minor corrections to them. Those corrections are highlighted in red. So policy 2.403, surplus property sales policy, policy 2.704, fixed asset control policy, 2.806, bids and quotations policy, and 2.810 payment procedures policy. These were things that were carried forward that the Financial Management Board passed that they didn't initially get on the TSBA manual. And we looked at all of those to find out because we need them on the manual so that our staff can see them, use them. They don't have to go to our website to do it. They can go to y'all's manual. So I would ask that these policies be added to your manual. That's what the board would act on at the voting meeting.
Okay, thank you. Consent agenda. All right, sounds good.
All right, I have one last item. It is 3.1.4. I sent an email to the board probably 30 minutes ago. I had sent an email to Jake knowing that he's not here. Mr. Howell and Mr. Hooper were there last night at the Budget Committee meeting, so they know a little bit about this already.
I watched it.
Michael Fulbright was there as well.
Exciting life.
In hope, in our hearts. And so we don't need any money from the Board of Education, but we think it would go a long way to attach a resolution of support from the Board of Education if that is something the board would be willing to do. And we would put that on both of the potential broadband providers' grant applications so that we would have a better chance of getting the broadband grant, which would fund 70% of the broadband infrastructure cost that is needed in Murray County that would provide broadband to about approximately 7,100 residents that don't currently have a provider.
Mr. Hale?
Real quick, when is that needed by?
So the sooner the better, but the actual drop dead date, the providers have to finish their applications and have them turned in before March 15th. So a good timeline, they said that was plenty of time, was February 22nd, but I know our voting meeting doesn't happen until, I want to say, is that March 1st or March 8th?
It would be March 1st.
March 1st. I think that would be, that might be okay.
So
it's 2 weeks before, so.
Yeah, so as he said, I was there. I don't know why we wouldn't support this. This is an initiative, I mean, just from an educational standpoint alone, this would impact a lot of our students, especially in District 8 and District 9 and well, Santa Fe, Hampshire, pretty much anywhere around the city of Columbia, on the outskirts here. So I don't know why we wouldn't support this. I don't have any reason. I mean, I also spoke to the gentleman from United Communications, and he said that it would, as many letters as we can get. So I took that to see that we probably need to be contacting our school administrators. We need to have letters from our children, school children, anything we can do in support. Other counties are doing this, so why would we not want to do the same thing? And what it does is just adds points to our grant application. So the more letters we have, of course, the better it is. So, I mean, I'd like to urge, Mr. Hickman, from you as well. I mean, I expect a letter from you as well. But I'd like for this to go out across the county that we, you know, all hands on deck. We want this to be out there, that we want support for this.
So, Mr. Wilcox.
And just to add, some clarification to kind of protect the board and protect any employee of the school system, we cannot put a specific provider on here. Just say that you want to support the broadband initiative in Murray County. Don't say you want to support Charter or AT&T or United Communications. Be very general with it, because you are acting as a school district when you fill these things out and send these in and pass it as a board. So it would show preference and show, you know, they may lean one way or another on which project they approve, and we want the state to make that decision and go through the grant applications. And the commission so far, it will go to vote next Tuesday evening, has allocated the max amount that was requested of them, which is $4.5 million, which would fund either project that's been proposed to them. So, with that said, you know, if you're a resident, do what you want to do. If you want to pick a vendor, pick a vendor. But if you're acting on behalf of Murray County Public Schools or the Murray County Board of Education, keep it general to just protect the employer, please.
Okay, let me, you still have your light on? Turn you did say that the county would be shelling out $4.5 million for this?
Only if we are given the grant.
So, the county would be shelling out $4.5 million.
We get the grant, yeah.
Okay. Mr. Ard, could you just roughly guess how much of a raise could we give our employees with $4.5 million? Ms. Kinzer, can you answer that? $6% raise?
Yeah, pretty good.
Okay. Funny, that money wasn't available last year when we were asking for that, was it? My last question would be, this is one company that's putting in for the grant on behalf of Murray County.
There
Two
are
companies.
two, yeah. So far, providers have come forward. It's United Communications and Charter, but that doesn't exclude any other provider from throwing their hat in the ring and submitting a grant application.
Are they nonprofit companies?
Charter is definitely not. I could have said that a little better, maybe. No, Charter's not.
So we'll be taking the county, not the school board. We're not obligated to any
Right.
financial, but the county will be putting out tax money to help these corporations down the road increase their bottom line.
Potentially, if we get the grant.
Okay. All right. We'll move this then to the voting meeting on March 1st. Will somebody draft a letter, resolution on our behalf or something?
I have emailed Jake an example resolution. He can take all the, other county stuff out of it and do what we need to do. He can ask me any questions if he needs as well.
Okay, great. Okay. Let's see. Instruction, Mr. Gaines.
Good evening. We were very excited that Commissioner Schwinn came to visit us on Friday. She presented the signed certificate from the governor recognizing our district as a Best for All district. She spent about an hour with us, and we enjoyed that time. We will be bringing back what the Best for All, we have a big banner and all that, and we'll bring that to the board meeting on the first, or whenever the board meeting is. We have a number of items on the for your information. We have the winter data assessment summary, the math remediation plan. It is a sample from Central, but it applies to all schools. That is what's going on. We just wanted to show you a sample of what's going on for math remediation. The textbook analysis update. We looked at all courses that were currently being run this semester and went back and tried to make sure that we had textbooks for all those courses. some of those are practicums and things like that, and they may not have textbooks. We also have the Fine Arts Strategic Plan, and Mr. Ritchie is going to make a short presentation about that. And Ms. Ventura is on the special ed and EA and bonuses, if you have any questions. And then with anything that's on the agenda, these items, if you have questions, we're here to answer.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you.
Kath, can we? Okay.
Yeah, wait, what you got?
Do we skip into the later parts?
Well, that's kind of what I'm wondering. Are we not gonna discuss the issue of the pay raises and these others?
Pay raise.
No, wait a minute, I'm looking up here at the top, number 5.
Okay. I had a question about the winter data assessment summary.
Okay.
Okay, I just want to, were we all back on the same page?
Yeah,
Okay.
I kinda got bombarded.
All right, thank you.
I was just trying to, if there were questions, we're
Okay.
glad to answer.
Yeah,
We weren't
so
trying to skip over.
Can you
certainly.
kind of go into some of this and walk through some of these? Because they're not great numbers.
Well, as you know, the achievement is still, we're still working on achievement as it has been, since the beginning of the semester. If you look at some of the comparisons where we were when we started to talk about, looking at the winter assessments, these are our benchmark assessments. I'm trying to pull it out so I can follow along. Da-da-da.
I mean, could we kind of just pick one of these and kind of walk through what this looks like?
Okay, so, if you look at where we were, so you look at, this is our assessment data. So you look at our assessment data for I-ready math. If you start looking at kindergarten, first grade, you can see where where we were in the fall, and then you can look at, in the middle is where we were in the winter. So we've made great progress. We went from, those that are on grade level, we're at 30 and 37%. Then respectively, now we're at the 50th percent.
Okay, which screen are you on?
I'm on the second slide. I'm just going slide by slide.
Okay, second slide.
So that's the...
Clearly, I'm not good at reading right now, so. Okay, so you're saying in the fall, so that's we were at, what does that 30% number mean?
That 30%, we had 30% of our kids on grade level in the fall. That's when we assessed them at the beginning of the fall. 30% of the kids are on grade level. At the midpoint, 50% of those kids are on grade level in kindergarten.
So, I mean, as I look at that, that seems like a huge jump. Like either one of the numbers is off. I'll just be honest, if I'm just glancing at that.
Well, it's just the hard work that teachers are doing. It's not it would be normal for us to move kids to getting them on grade level by mid-year.
Okay. Is the expectation for that to stay at that point, or what should that look like as we get to the end of the year?
We sincerely hope it will go up by the end of the semester. We'll have, more kids on grade level.
Traditionally, where does that end up at the end of the year?
Well, in kindergarten, we typically get kids on grade level. It kind of levels off, as we move toward the tested grades, that's where we see the drop-off.
Okay, so when you say, I'm just trying to understand it. So, in fall, at 30% are on grade level, as we continue to get them, because again, this is early on, we're getting a lot of information to them at this point.
Yeah.
We've got half of them on grade level from the midpoint.
So, you have to think about what these assessments, they assess what was taught by that, so you have to look at what we taught from fall to winter, how many kids got it and are on grade level, and that's what that measures. That's what that was already,
Okay. I'm sorry if I'm diving way into this.
No problem at all.
I know historically, as we look at our numbers as a county, and this is below, I wanted to really kind of look at the grade levels we actually test on, but.
Okay.
But this is just as good as anything. So I just one of the things we've struggled with in Murray County was we just don't have a high number of kids on grade level when we get to those testing things. And what I'm just trying to understand, and which is why I was looking at the older grades, are the tests not reflecting correctly? Because this, to me, seems reasonable. I guess the way you're describing it seems like a natural progression.
Mhm.
So are the state tests not reflecting correctly? Or do we feel like these tests, these internal testing that we're now doing with the Ames Web and the other things, are
Yeah.
they reflecting something
Well,
that's correct?
certainly Ames Web measures standards, and in kindergarten, you're looking at foundational standards in kindergarten and first grade. When you move towards the other grades, such as second, third, and fourth, certainly in third and fourth grade, where you talk about the tested grades, you're looking at more standards.
Okay.
So again, when you look at, like I-ready math, we start to think about where our kids were at the beginning of the year. You see that fall, we didn't have as many kids on grade level. So when we tested in the winter, yeah, that number is still low, but when we look at in order to meet our goals, to get kids to project them to be proficient, we're at those goals at the winter time. When you talk about that, when you look at the K-4 assessment data summary for I-ready math, and you look at the winter on grade level, you see the fall, you see the winter, then you see the single AMO goal. The state is holding us to that. That's our goal for accountability that we have to get. That's the benchmark we have to reach.
And that benchmark's for the end of the year or for the midpoint?
Yes, that benchmark is if they did the report card and held us accountable, we would meet our single AMO goal. Now, realizing we certainly want to be better than 29%.
I would hope so.
Yes, but we're just showing that for the goal, we've already met that goal at the winter benchmark. So we just want to show that to show where that goal is, but we certainly want to keep moving forward. We'd like to be. Our goals are double the benchmark AMO goal. That's what we set our goals to be.
So you have internal goals that are
Yes.
that are specific on that.
Yes.
Okay. Well, that may, if you get, like, as we look at that in the future, that would be helpful, because I'll be honest, the very low bar the state set is not really. I'm not all that concerned about it. Unless you tell me we're not hitting it, that's a different story.
Yeah.
But I would really be more interested in what what we've decided are best for our kids and what we're shooting for.
And I agree 100% what you're saying. What I want to interject is, to give you something to compare it off of. For example, for math, the state last year as a state in math was 25.9% proficiency. Okay. So obviously we want to do better than the state, and that's kind of one of the benchmarks that we always want to do better. But we also, you can see on that first slide where they are above that. So.
And I'll wrap up one more thing. I mean, one of the reasons I'm asking some question on this is I really would like us to. I was excited when we started talking about some internal benchmarking of our own, not that's relied on just what the state does. And the reason is I would like us to get to a point where we know what we need our kids to have, and we're marking it based on that.
Mm-hmm.
So I would like us to, as we move towards, I would like the discussion to be more centered around what we've decided as a district we want, and citizens and everybody else, what we want for our kids, and are we getting there? That's kind of where I want to do. I'm not as worried about the state and what their standards are, because again, and I'm also been worried about some misalignment between those state tests and what we say we need and what we're saying we're getting. Mm-hmm. That's a concern for me, because I know one of the things I hear from teachers quite often is that the state testing is off. It's even though it's what they say it's aligned to what the things they've told us we've got to teach,
right. It's
not, is what I'm being told. Again, I'm not doing that. So that's what concerns me, is when I hear things like that, I want to make sure we're deciding what we need, and that are we getting there or not, and then what do we need to do to correct that?
Well, I mean, we've made there's significant effort with, like you're saying, with us looking at relying on our own case benchmark goals, which are not the state assessment, but trying to look at how we're progressing from fall to winter, and then looking at from winter to spring before the assessment, and those case benchmarks are aligned with the standards, and our test questions or testing conditions are very similar to what we're going to experience in 10 Ready. So we hope that, I think sometimes when teachers say it's different, it may be that the testing conditions or the type of questions. So we're really, with cases, making that effort to really have those test-like conditions so that we can do that. And the coordinators meet with elementary, middle, and high school collaborative teams, and they look at the data. They're looking at this more often just on a quarterly basis. The teachers are making common formative assessments. the principals are looking at that data, week to week, and then they're bringing it to the coordinators' meetings on a monthly basis, and they're looking at the data. If you look at that last slide where we talked about PLCs and collaboratives, that's exactly the process is going on, trying to see where kids are, what changes are we making to make sure that we are hitting those benchmarks and moving forward and getting beyond the single or double AMO goals.
Mr. Gaines, I know we've talked about, and I appreciate this data, thank you for that. I know we have spoken about trying to streamline our assessments. Have we started weeding out some of the ones, because I know we continually hear from the teachers that they're being flooded with assessments and really that's impacting their instructional time. So have we started subtracting from yet?
Yes, we're continuing to look at, as teachers get better with common formative assessments, we're starting to work towards, we always have to do, we have to do Ames Web, we have to look at those skills. But we know that if kids are getting better with foundational skills in the earlier grades, in grades K through 2, then we can turn to using our, instead of using our Ames Web in those grades, we can take that away and start using the curriculum assessment or the iReady as a means to say where kids are. So that will lessen the number of assessments we have to take. And especially in middle schools, we're looking at not having to do those Ames Web assessments and those others, so that we can, there'll still be assessments on kids if they don't score as well. We'll still have to dig further to find out, are they missing any foundational skills that we need to address. We'll still have to do that. But yes, to answer your question, we're all looking at taking away those number of assessments.
Mr. Gaines, you just said something about in middle school maybe taking away Ames Web. Is that right? I thought we've always heard that Ames Web is the universal screener, that we have to use it because that's what we use to determine RTI.
It is a universal screener, but you can. For a long time, we didn't have a quarterly benchmark that we could use. But if you have a standards-based assessment that's aligned to the standards, you can use that in the upper grades as a substitute. You still have to, if kids aren't, say if they're below the 25th percentile, we still have to then fall back and use Ames Web to screen them, but we can use that as an initial screener rather than Ames Web, which will cut down on the number of assessments that we're doing in middle school.
Okay. In this information, how do y'all square the iReady information with the case? Because it looks to me like there's a disconnect between those numbers in a lot of places.
So both of them are aligned to the standards. The iReady data is more aligned with how we're progressing in the curriculum, and it matches that, the iReady math, what we're doing. The case is a general assessment that measures up until a point to say, hey, so through the winter mark, we would have, as a district, according to the pacing guide, completed all these standards. That case benchmark is going to assess all those standards, and then we see where we are. Do we have kids at that bar yet? So that's whereas iReady is more of a more frequent assessment. Case is more of that, hey, here's where we are at one point, and then we're able to project, if we took the 10 ready test today, this is where this kid would be, or this is what this kid needs. So that's kind of what the difference is between. It's more of a practice for 10 ready case is. iReady is more of a, it's just like us giving frequent assessments like we do in class. If you think about the old reading series, which give unit tests, that's kind of more of like what the iReady it measures.
So, which obviously not having case, but once we get our TCAPs or whatever they're called now, whenever we get that information, we're going to be able to compare that to the case assessments and see whether or not we're tracking closer to case or if we're tracking closer to iReady, because at this point it looks like we're doing better in a lot of areas in case as opposed to what we're doing with our curriculum, which is kind of puzzling, honestly. But can we also have information for 5 through 8 on the case? Because I didn't see a slide in there on that. I saw one specifically for Cox and Whitthorne. If you want to go over that, because I'd be really curious about what we're doing for specifically in remediation at those schools based on that data.
You want us to bring back, we do have the case assessment, because that's a requirement that we had to do on our ATSI schools, and you can see where they are still making some progress, but we still have some work to do, and you can see that where, if we look at our, we'll add that. We'll add the rest of the grades, but we wanted to show specifically those. I'll check on why we missed the other 5 through 8, but we do have the particularly ATSI schools that are still making some slow progress. But we tried to show you the data, but that's the way we are to report it. So you look at all students, then you look at the economically disadvantaged, ELL, and we try to do that for all grades. It's still a long way to go with those. We're still continuing to work with trying to make sure that more closely with the data teams that we're working to give additional assistance to those students to strengthen the response to intervention. I think that's one thing we really got to work on. A lot of the kids still have some skill gaps, but they also have some standards gaps, and we have to work on how can we address both of them in the time that we have during the school day. So, and a lot of that is trying to, Ray says more people. We need more people to help, so you can make those groups smaller. Well, you know, right now we don't have people they are premium right now, so, but we're continuing to work to try to address that. Hopefully we can, get more encouragement to get students in the tutoring after school. We're getting ready to launch that and get that going. We're also working on the summer, maybe it being more targeted, not just allowing everybody to come, but looking at those specific groups so we can really get targeted intervention for those students.
Are there any remaining ESSER funds that are going to go, or any other monies that are going to be targeted towards these particular schools? And I know you mentioned tutoring. Will we have it set up through ESSER going forward that we start tutoring like August 2nd or 3rd next year as opposed to starting in like February?
The way Tennessee All-Core is set up, we should be able to roll right into the fall and start tutoring again.
Okay.
Of course, it'll be, you know, it'll be working with teachers through the spring to get them to say, hey, we want you to commit to the fall, that when we come right back to school, we'll be able to kick off and start tutoring again.
Okay. Maybe surveys and things like that for teachers to gauge interest sooner rather than later.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Howell.
So, I mean, I've looked through this whole thing, I can't tell you how many times now, and, I mean, my head swims looking at it. So I can't imagine being a teacher and, you know, you've mentioned, you know, CASE, iReady, AimsWeb, TNReady, unit test, chapter test, and at some point they're expected to give a grade on any of them. None of this is graded except for maybe a unit test or a chapter test that they've done. I'm just wondering what good does this do if we're testing and testing and testing, but we're not teaching, or we're teaching a little here and a little there? I don't see how. I love data, trust me. I like to dig into it, and it's interesting to see. But data for the sake of data just doesn't make sense to me, and I like it. But I don't want to know, when are we going to start taking some of these away, is really what I'm getting at. I need to know that on August school year 2022, this is what we're testing, this is what the state's testing, and this is what we are, because we're losing teachers, not just because of pay, not just because of benefits, because they're testing. And these are good teachers, high quality level 5 teachers that are they're tired. And they're taking pay cuts. We're talking about pay and how little we pay them, and they're taking pay cuts to go somewhere that they don't have to test their kids constantly. So that's what I want to know is, really and truly, at the end of this, what are we going to test and what are we taking away? Because when we approved CASE, it's going to replace some tests, Okay. And it took away a unit test, is what I'm understanding. Okay. and maybe I didn't make it clear when I voted for Case, I don't want to take away a test. I don't want to take one and replace it. I want teachers to teach. And if they're teaching to a test, then that's not right. That's wrong. We're doing everyone a disservice, and I want to know, what are we taking away? What's coming off of teachers' plates at the end of the day?
And certainly teachers aren't teaching to that test, because that test is, they can see relative items that look like that, but they're not teaching to the test. And I mean, I think we are seeing progress, because we've made some great progress based on those assessments. As I said, we are trying to make sure we meet the state guidelines, but lessen the number of assessments that we have to do. We're going to take away the Ames Web screening for grades 3 through 8. So those will go away. They will only do they'll still have to do a reading screen, because we still have to do that by law. But we will use iReady that we already have rather than using Ames Web. So that will help reduce that number of assessments that we're doing. Remember, and when we talk about grades, we still have to help people remember that we should be moving towards standards-based grading and grading kids on how they're progressing and how they're making progress toward the standards. And the more we can do that, and the more we have those standards assessments, our kids, our parents will start to say, hey, this is how I'm doing relative to the standards, and these are the things I need to learn, know, and do to be able to progress.
Well, and I understand what you're saying. And honestly, other than for a grade point average, a grade doesn't mean anything. It doesn't. What these students at the end of their course retain and move on with, what they build foundationally here and move on with, that's really all that matters. But that's not what parents see. It's a report card. And why does little Johnny have all straight A's, but he on his TCAP, or that's not TCAP, his T and Ready is just, So I understand what you're saying, but what I'm saying is it's difficult to move forward when you're constantly being tested. And so I just want to make sure that we're giving proper instructional time and not worried about data. Because data's great, it's good, but if we just have all this data and we don't have time to do what we need to do, which is the real work of teaching kids, then it's just kind of moot.
All right, Mr. Hickman.
I'd like to add, because this is one part that I have been very adamant about, and this, when we brought in Case, what Case does is to me, it has a lot less to do with the state test. Now, can we align it to the state test? Yes. What it has more to do is where teachers can know what their kids know or don't know. Do they know standards? At the end of the day, it does, does it matter about the state test? No, but does it matter that kids know the standards? Absolutely. And what we need to do is have some kind of form of a formative assessment. What were we doing before? We were giving unit tests that, one, most teachers could tell you didn't really, when they decomposed their standards from what they were asking, didn't always align to what that unit test was asking. It was a textbook test which wasn't made just for Tennessee. It was just made. So what this Case does, it takes our Tennessee state standards and develops questions that align to them to see if the kids know them. What we have seen, and I've talked to just about every principal about it, and the excitement I am starting to see in the principals on using this formative assessment is very encouraging, because you're right, there's a such thing being data rich and information poor. And so what we have been working on in the instruction is, how do we read that data? What do we do with the data? Do we just bury it and never look at it again? No. We're talking about interventions. If these 3 kids don't know the standard, what are we doing to make sure they don't know the standard? So those are the kind of things why you want to do a CFA, a common formative assessment. It's good data, and the part that we have followed up with is making sure we have been very explicit. How do you use that data? Do we just look at it and say, yeah, he doesn't know it? That's what we've been working on, and we see a lot of value in that. And I hear what you're saying is, yeah, the unit test, but to get that off, because that was taken in some instances longer than this Case was. And so we want to use something that's more aligned to the standards we're supposed to be teaching in Tennessee to assess kids. And be able to do something about it before it becomes dead data and they're out the door.
So is there a way to use that data to give a grade so we don't have to take multiple tests here, is what I'm saying? I mean, if we can take, and I know it's not set up that way, I know it's not, but if I can take one test that accommodates multiple things, that makes sense to me. So, I mean, if we could find a way to translate that data into an 80 or a 90 or whatever, and I know it's not that easy, because it's not, but that's what I'm looking for. If there's a testing suite out there that would do that, I'd buy it in a heartbeat. But right now, it just seems like, well, we need the data, but we gotta have grades. And the state wants this, and we want this, and
This
where
does
do you
give
go?
a grade equivalency for each student, but you wanna be kind of cautious about using those, because we just wanna drive this as using for information to see if they know it or not a punishment or a reward. Just like I am advocating very hard, do not use this as a comparison measure. Don't compare this school versus that school. Now, how I'd like to do is, hey, if this teacher's doing really well every time on this standard, what is that teacher doing? So she can share it with those around her, and that's how we want to. But it could be, it does have a score, but they really, and I can talk to instruction, because it's really frowned on using a formative assessment for an actual grade. And there's many reasons it gets into that.
All right, thank you very much. Just for my own curiosity, the amount of testing that we do, how much of that, and I don't want this to be a very short answer, how much of that is state versus local mandated? Does the state require the testing more so than what we do locally, or is vice versa?
The state, mostly with Ainsworth, we have to do, and obviously the TN Ready. We just give this case
Okay,
3 times.
that's just all I needed to know. Mr. Moore?
Yeah, I guess I just want to kind of tie in what Ms. Parker had said. When I see something like this, what I'm really, as a board member, looking for, when you mention gaps or that there's things we're working on, are those things that we as a board can help with by means of ESSER funds or any other kind of funding? Because that's really all that we can do up here is give resources. So anytime that something reporting like this comes out, if there are resources that are needed, I understand we have staffing is a continued issue we're working on. But if there's any resources that we need to allocate, ultimately that's what we're going to have to do here. So that's what I think Ms. Parker was asking. So if that's something that we can do, whether it be textbooks, I don't even know what the answers are. I'm going to stay out of that. But if there's a need, please, by all means, when you give us this report, say, hey, here's our deficiencies, and here's some tools that can help us get there, and we need those tools from the board. That's what I'm looking for, if there is something additional we need to do.
And we'll be coming back to you looking at that very same thing, that, we have ESSER funds that, we had 20 positions, full-time positions, we only hired, 1 or 2, so that money is money that we have to reallocate. So
Okay.
we'll be coming back to you with a draft of, hey, here's what we'd like to reinvest in, and reasons why we need it.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other discussions on any of these items? Yeah, I'm not done quite yet. All right, let's do that then. Yeah.
I would like to introduce Mr. Brad Mitchell. He is our newly appointed Fine Arts Team Lead Coordinator, and he's done a lot of work thus far. We did present to you, or allowed you to view, the strategic plan for fine arts. That's just really an FYI, just to look at. Mr. Mitchell has been, I guess, to every school thus far, at least the majority of them, talking to fine arts teachers, doing needs assessments, trying to determine their true needs and their concerns. And thus the strategic plan, and really it started 2 years ago, I believe, the development of it, and we think we have it fine-tuned to where we can really look at it and be able to present it to you. Are there any questions pertaining to the Fine Arts Strategic Plan?
Ms. Parker.
I will probably go back to this for the textbook thing as well, but, you know, when we discuss ESSER funds and what we're gonna spend it on, you say in here that there are fine arts programs that don't have any textbooks or don't have any real curriculum that they're piecing it together. I think particularly for music, you mentioned in there that I think K4 elementary, they have Quaver, but then you go up and they don't have anything. Those are the things that I was hoping that we would have information on when we were looking at ESSER funds, and obviously that hopefully, because we can't hire people at this point, some of that will come back, and I hope that we can fill that need. The other thing that I would say though is, I think we've already seen just this year that we have a lot of underfunding of our arts as well. So when there's something in there about kind of expanding the expanding the offerings that we have, I just want to make sure that we get really good at what we already have before we start an expansion. I mean, it may be great to have dance at every school, but if we can't fund our band programs and they're operating with old uniforms and old instruments, I think we need to figure out particularly a strategic way to address that going forward, and have some buy-in from this board on that would be helpful.
Yes, ma'am. In fact, next month, we're going to present to you a performance-based funding proposal. We're really happy about that, thrilled about it. We have it broken down per student, and when I say performance-based, obviously up front, the programs will be given money, hopefully, provided the board approves. But to get that money each year, there's going to be expectations. We're going to pattern it similar to CTE, where CTE programs have to have quality indicators for their programs to receive funding, like Perkins money. We're going to try to mirror that with fine arts. So that's something that we're seriously contemplating, and we'll present that to you next month, hopefully. So.
Thank you very much. I want to just take a moment to thank you for putting this together. I've talked to several groups or folks over the last month that aren't aware of how much planning and strategic thought the school board and the school system staff has put into different things. This is a great example of one of those things. I mean, we have strategic plans for instruction. We have strategic plans for buildings and facilities. And I think the more that we raise that up to the community to make people aware that we actually do have, we don't just fly by the seat of our pants. We actually do have a plan that we've outlined and given a lot of thought to. I think that shows through this work, and I appreciate the efforts that you put into it. I don't see any more lights, so I guess we're good to go.
Thank you.
Thank you. I would. Let me have one, yeah. Thank you, appreciate it. All right.
Good evening. Back on November 2nd, you will recall that we agreed to bonuses and a pay increase for educational assistants in special education. And I told you at the same time that I put in the budget amendment to move that money into the bonus line that I would report back to you on numbers. One of the budget amendments that you approved earlier tonight is me sliding that money into the 189 bonus line. I'll be very brief unless you have questions, because I know you all can hopefully read this chart. Back on 11/2, when we agreed to that, we had 85 of 101 teachers on staff. We are now up to 89. We did hire we hired 5, and then we found one to do a 120-day contract, but I did have 2 resignations, so that's a net of just 4 in there. SLPs, we do have 1 applicant that I'm interviewing next week, so I'm excited about that. Psychologists, we actually lost 1. Facilitators and coordinators, I have not posted those positions. I'm certain that I would find somebody. Unfortunately, I'm also certain I would find somebody on my current staff, and I would be digging a hole to fill a hole, so I have not posted those positions. Educational assistant update, back on 11/2, we were at a 76% fill rate, 24% open positions. Right now, we are at 82% filled with 18% open positions. So I hope that that is a positive update. I hope that we're moving in the right direction. We're not there yet, folks, but I can definitely say we're moving in the right direction. We've gained instead of lost. I will say that unfortunately, of the positions that I still have open in special education, Whitthorne and Central are still huge. And just as an aside, I just recently met with 3 different companies that have often offered to do medical, Soliant, ProCare. They've often offered to do OTPT. We have those on staff. And right now they are looking at contract special ed teachers. So that may be something we'll be talking about this summer. Not there yet, but I am actively meeting with those people.
Thank you for the update. All right, moving on, Mr. Gaines.
The next item is under our instructional low bids. The first one is Lipscomb University. I think you asked us to go back and make sure that no other it wasn't offered anywhere else, and we did that. So that's just bringing that back to you. We did that due diligence. And this is, remember, this is part of getting our middle grade certification.
All right. Any discussion on that consent? Ms. Parker?
No, I don't have a discussion on that, but I did want to go back to the remediation plan on the math remediation, because it said that, did you say that that was applicable to not just at Central?
Right.
Because it, you know, it specifically references things like Elevate and things like that, so I was just curious.
Well, I mean, we have Elevate also at Cox, and we have Elevate at Culleoka also.
So, but is this math remediation plan then just at schools that have Elevate?
Well,
is that what it
the sample is for Central, so that specifics for Central does deal with those students that were in that Elevate plan. But we wanted to show a sample of, this is the process that they're using to, when kids are behind for all, if they're behind in any.
So like at Battle Creek Middle, they would be using it too?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Then the next item for approval was the iTeach. As you know, we have a number of permanent applicants, people who have 4-year degrees who have to be enrolled in a program, or we can't continue to employ them. So we are aggressively reaching out to all those folks that, you know, have graciously joined us. We're supporting them with teaching, but we're also supporting them to get them in a program to so they can continue their certification. So that's what iTeach is. We looked at we basically have an agreement there for if we were able to get everybody in this program, this is what it would cost. So it may not exceed that. It may not reach that whole amount.
Mr. Howe?
So how many teachers do we have on waivers for this year that don't have teaching degrees? And I'm assuming this is don't have teaching degrees at all. These are just, I have a degree in whatever I'm teaching.
Let's see, quick numbers. We have around 40, but some of those do include, these are on permits, that some of those do include people who have either an out-of-state license, so they're working on getting that transferred in, and some of them are expired licenses. So if you take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, there's about 6 or so of those, so it drops the number down about 35. Some of these are also going into another program that we have already up and going that works for our secondary math and science, which we have a lot of those on permits. But iTeach will help cover our elementary. It can even it can actually help with our special ed department. But right now, we obviously don't have any of those on permits because they don't qualify. But we have a lot of elementary and ELA and those kind of positions that iTeach would be great for that to do for them.
So just to clarify, this year, I have a degree in business, and I wanted to teach. I wanted to be a teacher. And
come on down, we'll get you signed up.
No, I'm good. I'm just saying. So, and I applied for a waiver, and it was good for 1 year.
Okay.
Does that? What are we doing next year, or is that kinda like we used to do before, if you had a degree in teaching, but you hadn't finished out, you could apply and then,
It's a
You
little
had-
different.
okay.
It's a little different than in years past because the state opened up the permits and waivers so broad this year because of the staffing shortages. So usually before you had to have a bachelor's degree in that subject that you were teaching,
Right.
and as well you couldn't have a permit and any end of course exam. This year the state waived all of that, and
Right.
so if you have a bachelor's degree, you
Period.
can teach.
Right.
Right, with the proper, there's several other steps to make sure you have to go through. But I was at a conference a couple weeks ago, and I was like, are you all going to continue that? And they're like, we don't know. So they may or may not continue it for the next couple years. But there's also legislation that's going, if people have a permit, they can get into teaching rather than going through other courses. But that's all for the future. But for right now, for next year, for some of these people who I know are principals, some of these people, they're doing great. They want to continue in it, and they're wanting to stay with Murray County. So we've actually, a lot of them have already sat through iTeach, because they can do iTeach on their own. This is asking for if we as Murray County can go ahead and pay for some of these people who are already with us. But it is a program that they can do on their own outside of this, and we're set up for that as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Irvin?
People who perhaps, or rather teachers who do not have the right certification or the right license, or perhaps something has expired and they're not 100% on the, I guess, I shouldn't say up and up because that makes it sound like it's something bad, but fully certified with the state. Are we actively making sure that if we hire those people that we've got what we need in order so that they're getting the proper pay? Because the reason why I ask is I've heard of a situation where that's not happening, and I hope that that's not the case. So what I'm asking here is, the people who are performing the role of a teacher, are they getting paid as a teacher, or what are we doing in those situations?
So legally, you cannot pay somebody as a teacher if they don't have the proper credentials. What we have done is we've brought them on at a transitional pay rate, and once their permit gets approved, then they're retro paid and they're put on to the actual the teacher salary.
I understand that, but that's being communicated with them that we're actively,
Yes, it is.
and it will be retroed, okay.
Yes, it is. It's in every single one of their intent to hire letters.
Okay.
And Ms. Belinda Williams in my office goes through that, because
Sure.
we know that sometimes that can be a big difference in,
Yeah,
what
of
they
course.
do. And as well, anybody that you hire in after the year, we also had to explain it's a 200-day contract. You're coming in, halfway through the year or whatever, and it has to get prorated out by how many days are left paid. So
Okay.
HR does explain that information to those who are coming on board.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you very much for all that. I believe we're ready to move next to operations.
Good evening. First thing under operations tonight is All Hands on Deck. All Hands on Deck is a community group that is asking for facility use. Mr. Gaines has talked more with Ms. Lipscomb, who's here to speak to you tonight. We had initially some issues with the request for facility use, and then Mr. Gaines has been working with them. She wanted to speak to you tonight on what they are asking to do with our facilities.
Okay.
So I'll let Mr. Gaines add anything that he needs to. He has done most of the legwork on this.
And we also wanted, so as she'd asked for some facilities, we wanted her to give you, the board, an idea of just what kind of things All Hands on Deck is doing for schools, so you'll have that background information.
Okay, thank you. Come on up.
This button, right?
Yes,
All right,
you're
good.
on.
Thank you guys for having us. We really appreciate it being here. I'm going to explain also some of the facility, I guess, mix-up and things like that we had as well. Let me introduce myself. My name is Jay Lipscomb. I'm a native and founder of All Hands on Deck. Some of you guys may be familiar with me. We had a program, Vision Academy, that was in Whitthorne Central as well as at Cox up until the pandemic, and then we decided to go online due to the pandemic. We are 501c3, federal and state nonprofit agency. just to give you a little bit background of why I'm here today. A few months ago, you polled the community for help. I was asked to come to a meeting. It was around October, November. Cox was showing something like 90 fights in the first 60 days. And the schools wanted help from the community. So we were invited because of, our organization was invited because of the work that we've done already in the community. We started a program simply doing expungements and creating second chances a few years ago. And moving forward, we decided that instead of waiting until those fell into the river, we would walk upstream and figure out why they were falling into the river in the first place, developing programs that takes preventative measures to keep youth from getting into trouble. We have programs stemming from Vision Academy where it teaches essential elements like money management programs, chess, boxing, Fresh Food Fridays, which is one of their favorites, sewing, things like that, partnering with businesses, allowing youth to see what it looks like on a day-to-day basis. And then we have a program called Reels that redirects youth who are headed down the wrong path. Now, speaking of those 90 days and those fights, I'm not sure if some of you guys may have been aware, but General Sessions even had to shut down some of their court just to accommodate juvenile court. I know that because I'm sitting there on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday with some of your youth. So we, like I said, we have a program that redirects youth that are headed down the wrong path, ranging from tutoring programs to mental and physical health training to trash pickups, partnering with youth, and identifying with issues that are keeping them stagnant and bound. Our hurdles when the school came to us was, of course, I'm sure everyone hears that it's a lack of facility here. We don't have a community center here in Columbia, Tennessee. So, of course, we needed a facility able to accommodate youth. And also transportation was an issue as far as parents getting youth to and from a facility. So we decided, you know what, let's go back to the schools and say, can we house it at the schools? The kids will be there. It's after school. So it felt like that was going to be an accommodating situation. So we came back to the school and asked for this facility in which we provided, we would provide the staff. We also provided a $2 million insurance policy with the responsibility of with issuing it to the responsibility of the school, as you guys had access to. We did our due diligence. We created the programs. We did everything that you guys asked us to. We needed the use. What we needed was the use of the facility and providing one staff member to lock up, from what I understand. And that's where we were having the hurdle. I think we're at somewhere at asking $8,859.60, which is the total for the facility use, as well as I think it's also for the extra person that's going to stay. I'm not sure. Okay. So I want to say that's the total amount that we were asking for. So, again, we're coming back to you. With all due respect, Board, you know, we as the community, we stepped up and we responded. Now the ball is in your court. So what are we going to do? As my grandmother would say, are we going to barbecue or are we going to mildew? What are we going to do here as far as moving forward to help these youth and propel these youth so that way they can move forward? We're not asking for, listen to the budget here, we're not asking for a whole lot, it doesn't sound like, based on what everyone else is asking for. But we're asking the board to meet us somewhere in the middle. Actually, we're sparing the most expense. We're asking you to meet us somewhere, we're going across the middle, okay? So we're asking just to meet us. So that's what I'm here today for. The mix-up with the facility was when we initially entered this, we were just looking for a facility to say yes. So we entered any facility that had a gym, Highland Park, Cox, Withorn. We were just looking for a facility. And I understand that overloaded the system, and they didn't know what we were actually trying to do. So I contacted Miss Misty, who's been terrific during this entire process, and Mr. Gaines, who has helped us tremendously. I think I've bugged him a gazillion times trying to get this right. So what we did was we narrowed it down to Cox, since that was the area that we felt that was going to be we needed to target the most. And as of yesterday, I didn't know up until yesterday. I thought I was going to be doing a different presentation, but up until yesterday evening, around 5 o'clock or so, we received a notification that it had been denied as far as use of the facility, and not really sure why. But we're here today. Again, I still wanted to come and present to the board because I wanted you guys to know what we do, and I also wanted to understand what the hurdles were. And again, I'm still asking the board, even though Cox denied, meet us somewhere. Meet us somewhere to help these youth. Okay? Thank you.
Okay, let me just ask a couple questions.
Okay.
Are you looking, for your request, is it more of just the space issue that's been the problem, or is it the usage fee that's
It's
been
the
the problem?
It's the space, it's the
Okay.
space, and we were coming back because, of course, we were gonna ask the board to accommodate meeting the usage fee as well as the, providing the person to lock up. We
Yeah.
would provide the staff
Okay.
for the youth.
And you said this is primarily at EA Cox. Do the Boys and Girls Club have a presence at Cox? I don't think they do in middle schools, do they?
They do.
They do? Okay.
They do. They take them, to the, 8th Street, to the teen center.
But I mean at the site itself.
They bus them from the site in the afternoon.
But don't they, at the elementary schools, they have them in-house?
And some of
Okay.
them we take them to Wayne
Okay.
Street, some they are there.
All right. I just didn't, that would be something I could see maybe a little bit of a rub there, but, I don't know. I'm curious why it was denied.
So the first thing is, no principal approved, and quite frankly, there's not a nice way to say it, they didn't want it in the building. The initial request was asking to waive $36,000 of fees from your building's usage fees. We've had quite a bit of a discussion about building usage. Down to Cox, you're still at over 8,000, and right now we do not have a building facilitator that would be there, per our policy that they would have to provide. Most programs that operate like this within your school have to have a formal MOU between the school board and the organization with parameters set. Mr. Hickman pointed out to me, the school system did not set up the meeting in which this was approached. So this was not a school request. This was a request that came through a community organization. And actually, I believe Mr. Hickman found about it after the fact and just happened to be able to attend that night. So this wasn't a district request made on your behalf. I don't have right now a principal that will approve this. And so those were the reasons that it was not approved in the system.
Okay. Thank you.
Can I counter that a little bit?
Yeah,
Please?
quickly.
Okay, yes, the initial meeting was not, initiated by the school. However, I was called in on a separate meeting from from Cox School, asking me to come in, and where I actually sat in on a meeting, not once, but twice, and then met with some parents also. So the school did ask me.
And I would
So.
Okay, thank you.
Not to be a point of contention, we spoke to the principal today, and the deny came from the school.
Okay. All right. Is there anything that the board would like to take action with this? I mean, I think it's kind of out of our hands to a certain extent. I want to personally thank you for the work you're doing, even though we might not be able to work something out with the school system. I work at the Murray County Jail, so I see the other side of what you're trying to prevent.
Absolutely.
So there's an answer out there. I would like to get your contact information
Absolutely.
before you leave tonight. Even though the schools might not be the solution, there is a solution out there.
I would love to
So
talk
thank
to
you,
you.
and I'd like to talk to you going forward. too.
Thank you guys for your time.
Thank you.
And thank you.
All right, Mr. Pearman, back to you.
Moving forward, mainly tonight, we have just some FYIs for you. I do have the operation update there for you. The main thing I will just give you from that is, as we head into the spring, based off of action you took last month, we have probably around 15 projects that are going on through the spring and the summer at multiple buildings. Those are kicked off. Some have actually started. And Mr. Pointer's athletic projects, if you go through many of the schools, you'll see are making some great strides as we go through the spring. Capital projects report, the train report, project cost report are just your monthly reports that are there for you. If you have any questions from them, please reach out to us. 3.3.3.2, I actually questioned today. I think I know why this was on here, but I want to make sure that we ask, and what I wanted to primarily do tonight is ask what you guys wanted from us. I know that Mr. Moore and I have spoken about a rather cold day that he stood outside of one of our schools, and I kind of clarified that maybe that school on that day wasn't following the protocols that we've given them. I have talked to Mr. Berry in our safety office and have him going back through with each school, both with admin and with the SRO, to make sure that they are aware of the expectations when a visitor comes to the door, how we are answering the door, how we're letting folks in, what's required, and under what circumstances we would let or ask someone to remain outside. There are some certain circumstances when it's someone is irate, when we know that there's a parental issue and someone is not supposed to be there, if we know a non-custodial family member, a grandparent or someone is there and they're not supposed to be. There are times we would ask someone to remain outside, but on a given opportunity for you to pick up your child or to come see your child, that was not standard protocol. So I will defer and say, what do you need from us? And we can provide anything to you both through email or back at the board meeting in a formal setting.
Sounds like we need a budget amendment to buy Maura a jacket for cold days he has to stand outside.
Well, I was being irate, so.
Well, that may be why you're out there.
They wrote a special one in for me. No, I mean, I know that I was a little, I would say hot, but I was cold that day. But I think the broader thing, and it kind of, and I actually since that time had several other issues that popped up, and I think it boils down to one thing for me. I know through all of over the last 2 years, not just with the pandemic going on, but with a lot of security measures, we've really changed a lot of how we do things. And I think what came up was, and it kind of was, again, broader, is to just make sure that, you know, in December we met as a board and kind of set what I felt like was a very clear expectation of what we wanted us to try to return to what it was like 2 years ago, where our schools are inviting places, within reason, obviously, and that we're taking measures to undo some of the things that were quote-unquote temporary measures that fell into place. And I think we've still, and I think what brought this up for me was I think there's still some carryover, some things that got missed. And I'll bring, you know, something that was brought up to me was, you know, for example, Valentine parties and some other things. And I know to some administrators that those things may not seem like a big deal. And I get that because, you know, we spend a lot of time talking about big, important dollar figure things. But if I'm going to step back and be a parent again for a second, I mean, there was a time when a Valentine's party was kind of a really big deal. And if you look at some of these kids that literally they may be in 3rd or 4th grade now and they've never had one because of the way things have been going. So I know those things have slipped through the cracks, but I just want to make sure that we're stressing to the building administrators, to staff, to please make sure that they're undoing all of those temporary measures and putting them back to where we are and trying to quickly get things back so these kids can have some normal things happening to them again. Whether it be parents being able to feel it warm and inviting, be able to get not physically warm, but actually invited into the building and feel like they're welcome there, because that's absolutely what I as a board member want. Is I want our parents to feel welcome and feel like they can go in and that's a safe place for them to discuss things and it's not an uncomfortable place. So on to just the kids feeling safe and comfortable and having just some fun for once with something as silly as a middle school dance or a Valentine's party. I know it sounds crazy, but we need to get back to some of those things. They're kind of important, and I know they slip through the cracks with the everyday things, talking about the testing and everything else, but I think we need to remember them.
I will say the things that Mr. Berry speaking to folks about go back to what we were doing a couple years ago. One of the things that we kind of realized that through the pandemic and our focus on so many different things, just like in every other part of our staffing, our office staffs have seen great rollovers, seen great changes. Our buildings are designed a little bit differently. We went back and actually pulled the agenda. Ms. Shirley had been instrumental maybe the year before pandemic, of really saying one of the groups that we overlook sometimes are our clerks and our receptionists that are the first person to greet you when you get to the school. We leave it sometimes to principals to pass on our wording to them. So one of the things we had done, we met with them at Central. We went specifically through the call boxes. I notice on a daily basis as I go to different schools that needs to be reiterated again. You should never push a button and then hear a door click. Whether they've seen you 1,000 times or not, that should never happen. It does. Happens with us. We have to reiterate to staff, if I go to a building, unless it's an emergency, I push the button and I stand. Even though they'll say, "Hello, Mr. Perryman, do you want to come in?" They still are supposed to greet me, and we have to set that standard because we do have parents that have kids in multiple buildings, and they should be able to arrive and be greeted the same way every time. we talk to them about every situation, emergencies, bad weather, rain, snow, how we can, you know, when it's appropriate to do a little bit different than that. So that's one thing we've done. As far as the activities within the school, from my end, from our office, we just want to make sure that regardless of whether it's a ball game, a community event, a graduation, a Valentine's party, that they just understand this is how folks come into the building. We don't on our side limit folks from coming into the building, other than if it is a situation like I mentioned, it's a custody issue that we're aware of. You run through Raptor and we find sexual offenders that come into our buildings and not are supposed to be there. You know, a lot of folks say, why do you have to run my driver's license every time I come in here? And it's because some things changed from the last time that you were in. And those protocols are there to protect our children and protect our staff, never to limit folks coming into buildings. So different buildings and how they are re-emerging folks back into their building is a different conversation. We just want to make sure that for no unjustified reason you have to stand in the cold, or anyone does, actually.
Ms. Earth.
Just to kind of piggyback on what David's saying, I just want to make sure that it's real clear that our parents feel welcome, and teachers are, you know, they have a lot of responsibility, but I mean, I heard from a lot of those Valentine's Day elementary students across the county, and I do know that there were some that sent out letters specifically stating that parents were not, and it kind of alluded to COVID protocols. And I think that, don't get me wrong, I've taught you, and you've been in the classroom. Those days are chaos, and I get that sometimes you don't want to, you know what I mean, you don't want to have to entertain the parents, and it gets to be crazy, but I don't want the COVID protocols to be a cover for us having opportunities to have our parents be able to partake in and enjoy and be a part. I mean, at one point in time, that was high up of having parent involvement, so I want to make sure that we're not just hiding under that blanket still.
So I would just say, as a middle school teacher, I never had the privilege of experiencing the chaos of a Valentine's party, and I'm not sorry that I didn't. But the only thing I would say, in defense of anyone, is that as we've gone through this, one thing that I would ask everyone to remember is that we do hit pockets of spikes constantly. We have a school right now that is really suffering through. They're right on the verge of not being able to function. And there are times that I would just beg of folks, no, don't put a blanket assumption on folks. You know, ask for clarification, ask for different things, and don't just assume that just because one time someone said, hey, we're not doing this time, that there wasn't a justified reason. I think that it's too easy sometimes to just assume that everybody's playing by the same rules, and I do think sometimes there are pockets that are within there, whether that be a school, a grade level, or a hallway, depending on the layout. So that would be my only ask, is that we remind folks as they contact you, have you spoken to your principal? Did you ask specifics as to why this may have occurred? And it may not occur the next time, and that would be the only thing I would give in any defense of something like that.
Thank you very much. Ms. Parker.
Also going to multiple schools, I'll just say, I think it's not one specific school that communication needs to go out to. I think it's all our schools, because I think they all do it a little bit differently. But I think going back to what Mr. Moore had originally said was how much money we put into our lobbies and those type of things. If we are going to make people just stand outside the door, particularly when we're looking at the development of these schools, whether or not we should really be spending that much money. I think we have a lot of dead space in some of our schools that doesn't get used, especially if we're going to make parents stand outside the door for a while.
And the layout of the school sometimes it creates a little bit. If you walk up to the window at Withorn, you're within 8 feet of the lady that's going to open the door, and she's looking right at you. That's a much different situation than if you walk up at Cox and you actually have to go through a vestibule and go into an office. So that's one of the things we do fight, is that sometimes, you know, that breeds a little bit of and I'm not picking on Withorn. I'm not saying Withorn, but I'm saying the layouts of the schools, sometimes the school you're at, they can see you through the window. That sometimes it doesn't justify it, it just means we have to continually reiterate to that staff and to that administrator, these are your protocols and this is how you do this, and so.
Well, let me just say, I recognize that each school is different. I think communicating to parents that are coming to the school how exactly you're gonna handle that really helps with making parents feel comfortable going in. If they know what the process is, if they know when I come up there, I've gotta have my license out so you can see it and put it up to the camera, or, you know, I'm gonna be able to go in and hand you my license, or what exactly the process is. But, and I recognize again that each school is different, but I think, you know, as parents, you pretty much go to certain schools, and if you know what you're supposed to do, I think that probably will help with irate parents like Mr. Moore.
And that's one, and that's one thing that I can speak to Mr. Berry about, is not just speaking with the schools, but two things. One, getting a countywide guideline. This is our expectation of what you're gonna do when you come to a door, and then talk to those administrators and say, if there's a tweak to this because of a circumstance of how your building's laid out or anything, let your folks know that through some sort of communication, and you see that. You know, I think of we've got a high school, I can walk up, push the button, and the door's probably gonna click. And it's not okay. If you go to Central High School, if you don't have your ID, she's not gonna open the door. I mean, it's just not gonna happen. So what we will do is just reiterate, here's the county expectation. We can work with Mr. Cobb to send that out and put it on the website as well as kind of how this works. Nothing that's safety violation, it's what you would need to know to get in. But then have each school just say, you know, given our circumstances, this is an extra step, or this is how we do this. We can do that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Moore.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was kind of tongue-in-cheek on the design thing, but the more I think about it, I mean, so I'll just use, since everybody knows, Battle Creek Middle School. So we just built a nice big school. There's out front, there's 4 sets of double doors into a foyer with another 4, maybe it's 5 sets of double doors. I may be off on that. It's a lot of doors. So I guess from a cost standpoint, I mean, realistically, if we're gonna stop everybody at the front door, why did we build a double entry front area for people to wait if we are never at any point gonna have people waiting there?
Fire marshal.
We have to have double sets of doors there?
Depending on the space that you're coming into, the fire marshal determines the egress of the building.
So
and
we have
because of
2
the
sets of
large...
doors? No, I meant the 2 sets.
Well, you have the weather vestibule, and that's
But
part
if we're
of,
making everybody wait outside, the weather vestibule is pointing.
We're not supposed to be making
Okay.
everyone wait
So
outside.
I mean, I guess that's my thing. So if maybe and I've had a lot of time to think about that too. So I know we need to balance security with the, you know, being welcoming, and there's a balance there, you know. So I want to make sure we're not going too far to the, you know, lockdown security side, but we also don't want to go too far to the, somebody walks up and I see them 20 feet away and I'm clicking them in.
Well, one of the things that we've done too, and you guys approved this, maybe not last month, the month before, if you've been by Riverside was kind of our test run. Now, as you walk up to their building, we have a part of the door and the screening that's on the door that you come to. It tells you how to get into the building. It tells you the process in a clean way. It's not a note that someone hung on the door with an arrow that says push here. It is a process for that, and it should, in the case of Battle Creek, direct you to the correct door.
Clear communication is always a good thing.
The other thing you will see if you've been to Central High School and at Riverside as well is now that every door that goes outside that is not the door you're supposed to enter directs you to the front office. And so we're trying our best to make sure that when folks approach, they know where they're going and what they're supposed to do.
Okay, thank you very much.
The only thing that we had tonight that requires any action from you is 3.3.5. It is the request from the Emergency Management Department, just simply to use Central High School as their emergency storm shelter during Mule Day. We've done this every year for as long as I can remember, but they do have to formally request that. That's the only thing that we have that would require any action from you.
Can we go on consent with that? Okay, consent. All right, thank you very much. Anything else?
No, sir.
Okay, good deal. Let's move to policy.
These all deal with our out-of-zone policy. Mr. Ritchie's been working on these, so I'll let him, if you all have questions about these, this is due to the state law that was changing. I will say that we contacted TSBA. The state's still not exactly sure, like they haven't given us we did take the model policy that they gave us and modeled it after this, and all of these versions did go through TSBA to make sure there wasn't any conflicts legally with them already. So outside of the legal aspect of it, turn it over to you guys for questions.
Okay.
Any questions?
Any questions on the policy? Mr. Moore?
I'll be honest, I haven't read all through these yet. Were we able to, I'm frustrated with the state, so just don't get me wrong on that. This is very frustrating that they're throwing things at us and they don't really give us clear direction, so it's very difficult. And this is even on not when the state is involved, this is, the out-of-zone policy for us is historically a little bit tricky. Let's just put it that way. So, do we feel like this is going to address that as clearly as we possibly can?
That's a great question. If you look at 1.703, what the red line is versus what's currently there, it currently goes from, as it currently stands, it's line 1 through 5, and then look at everything else that's been added to that to help clarify the open enrollment law. We really feel that we've addressed every area of concern that could possibly be made, and just as Ms. Gerard stated, there's some indication that this summer there may be some changes to this open enrollment law, but we feel that we're prepared for that, and we're being proactive in this, and we've looked at other districts to see how they've handled this, and we feel we're spot on.
Okay.
So,
do we have, we're able to, if I understand the state law at this point, we're able to set our capacity numbers based on what we can staff and handle.
Yes,
I think
sir.
that's an important
the key word is reasonable.
Okay.
And we feel that it's based on current teachers that are there, within reason, of course.
Okay.
I've reached out to all of the principals to project their available space, and we do have to post that for 14 days prior, at a minimum 14 days prior to the open enrollment window, which is April 1st through April 30th.
How are we handling, and again, I apologize because I haven't read this, how are we handling currently out-of-zone students at a school versus, are they going back in the pool with everyone, or?
No, sir. As the new law states, all current out-of-zone students are automatically in that school. That's now their home school. Now, we are going to make them go through the process just as a matter of record keeping, and I'll go over this at the principals meeting tomorrow. So there'll be 2 stacks, those that are already in your school. We just want to know who is out-of-zone that's already really approved to be at that school.
So then my next question is as we run into issues, which in a couple of years we may run into, where we are at capacity.
Yes, sir.
Is it going to be reverse order of that if we are able to, if we have to make room, which is something we haven't, how do we handle that if we have to make room at a school for actual in-zone students?
My hope, the way that we're doing this right now, since it is based on current teacher staffing, it will help prevent a massive exodus from one school to another school. So we feel at least for the next few years there'll be some control over this, at least maybe until the next rezoning, if there is one, or as new schools are built. And I will go ahead and point this out. In policy 1.703, we do have provisions there for rezoning and things of that nature. So we've tried to address every area possible. Right, and we know it's not perfect.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
So I'm going to stumble through this too because I read the highlights. I read the Cliff Notes version of this, just joking. I just skimmed it. But so I'm trying to think it through, and I'm going to think it through with Santa Fe because that's where my kids go. So let's say hypothetically you have a school that has a capacity for 600 kids and they have 500 kids attending. These are rough numbers, of course. And let's say we have 3 classrooms that will hold, like let's say it's a first grade classroom, hypothetically. We have 3 teachers that could teach, I don't know, 20 kids. So that would give that first grade a capacity of, say, like 60 in that scenario. So then would we say if we had 55 kids, then we have 5 openings? Is that how that would be roughly, or?
What I communicated to the principals as I requested their projected available space is it's based on where they currently stand with the number of students in each grade level with the current teachers that they currently have, and that's really the best that we can do. We still have to allow for new residential growth and that sort of thing, so it'll be a challenge. My hope is it will actually be smoother going into next year than it was this year, and there'll actually be a process now going forward. Once a student's enrolled out of zone into that requested school and say they don't meet expectations, that principal can kick them back at the end of the grading period. However, if that parent does appeal that principal's decision, it'll go through to a panel much like DHA, and we'll hear the case, we'll see all the documentation, so that if it does get appealed all the way to the board, you'll have a packet and everything that you'll see everything.
So 2 more questions. This is probably silly, but I know these questions will come to us at some random time. Hypothetically, let's say a child is zoned for a school, say Culleoka, and then they move to Columbia, but they've been attending Culleoka. Would they then be grandfathered into Culleoka if they choose to do that by that rule, or would they then be...
Per the policy, they'd be allowed to stay at that school.
Okay. And then last question is, I know we're going to post potential vacancies, but are we also going to take like maybe I don't know what to call it, maybe a wish list or a waiting list? Because we know that if there is a big demand, then that might impact our numbers. So maybe if we only have 5 positions, or I shouldn't say positions, but spots available, but then we get 25 kids, then we might have an extra. Are we going to do that type of thing?
Yes, ma'am. Per the policy, there'll be a lottery.
Okay.
And even if there's 0 space currently available, if there are requests to attend that school where there's 0 space, there'll still be a lottery to determine a waiting list.
Okay.
So we'll have it all planned out.
And then I'm just understanding this correct. We're just pre-planning, but there's a chance all this could change, Ms. Gerard.
It's possible. So, like I said, I've reached out to we've kind of been waiting for them to give us some more direction, and we got to the point where we can't wait anymore. Our open enrollment's coming. We do have to be proactive on this measure. And so, as soon as the state does do something, I get automatic updates from TSBA. They'll send us information letting us know if we need to change anything. Like I said, I did send this to the TSBA attorneys already. They've reviewed these. Gave us some feedback. We've tweaked those, and these have all been looked at by them. So legally, there's no issues there.
All right, just last 2 questions. Kind of when you get to the transfers and the return to zone school, I just want to make sure that you guys are going to have some internal procedures on what the rules look like. I know there are some exceptions allowed. I would hope that the superintendent or his designee has kind of internally those in things, because I would like to avoid getting to a case-by-case basis where that ends up getting appealed back to the board and we have to figure out why 2 things were done differently, I guess is what I want to...
In reference to 6.206, that policy.
Sorry. I was at the bottom of the page, 1703?
Oh.
Yeah, and that's at the bottom of that, where it just goes into the return to zone school.
Got you. Yes, were there return based for not meeting expectations?
Yeah, because
yes,
it's
sir.
kind of a broad one on that. I just want to make sure that you guys internally have it explained exactly what that means.
Yes, sir.
Because I know one of the things I found out when we went through the hearings last year was that's kind of a broad terminology. I would like for it to be very clear so that, again, students deserve to know what is expected of them.
Yes, sir. You make a valid point. It'll be communicated to the schools, and it has already, that anytime a student is sent back for not following or meeting expectations, whether it be grades, behavior, or attendance, if it's attendance, they should be going through the tier truancy program. If it's behavior, they should be in RTIB. If it's academics, there should be some academic behavior plans in place. So they have to provide those supports.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. You good? Everybody good? Okay.
I think we are. Do we need to take any what do we need to do on these, anything? Move them on to the main
Yeah, you can either move them to consent or vote for them.
consent, okay, consent. Other business, we've already covered, yeah, we've already done salary study. There's nothing else under policy that we needed to tackle, was there? That, y'all covered everything?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The appeal, trying to think, 'cause we really can't take any action at tonight's meeting. This is where I wish I had Jake here to give me a little guidance.
What you have to
Go
do
ahead.
is decide if you do wanna hear the appeal. You'll have to, if you decide on that, you'll have to form a committee. And, your choices are to hear it, to form a committee, take no action, or say we're not gonna hear it. That's
Seems like
what
the
we did
last time this came up, did we not do it at a regular board meeting? 'Cause we have to vote on it.
We didn't have to vote, we simply did not make a motion to
Right, there was
hear
no
it.
motion, and
It'd
since,
have to be at a regular meeting.
that's what I was thinking, so this,
It just
yeah, we'll
needs to
take
go
this up at the regular meeting.
under-
Okay, yeah, that's good, and then we'll, either like the options you just said, we'll
Or-
act or
or
not
not.
act. Okay, but at least you have the information there on the, packet.
And Jake just texted and said, no action tonight.
Okay. Hey, Jake, must be watching. All right, any other announcements, or?
I'd like to do an announcement real quick before we
Yes.
get out of here. As, Mr. Gaines said, that we were, designated, last week by Commissioner Schwinn, but we got great news in today as well. We're gonna have, some folks from the state, and they're gonna invite, Representative Picky and several other folks on March 11th. I'll give you the details when we have them, but we're gonna be showcased, throughout the state for, our Reading 360 program, and we're gonna be recognized, and we're gonna get another banner for that. As soon as we get all the information, I'll let you guys know where it's at, and you'll be invited as well.
Awesome. All right, we have a special called meeting next week, and then a regular board meeting on the 1st. And then a retreat on the 7th. All right, we got a lot done, and thank you all for hanging in there. Appreciate all your work. What?